They said I was too weak to be Luna, too soft, too broken. My own mate threw me away like trash in front of the whole damn pack, chose a woman with claws sharper than her heart, and never looked back. I disappeared, shattered, convinced the world saw exactly what he did, nothing. But here's the thing about being discarded. You either stay in the dirt, or you rise so high they choke on your name. And when the most feared alpha king in the Northern Territories looked at me like I was made of something rare, that's when everything changed. Stick with me till the end of this story. You'll see how a girl everyone called worthless became the queen they couldn't stop talking about. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. Let's do this. Bapasi. Iskacham. The rain hammered against the forest floor like fists on a war drum. Everly Hart stumbled through the mud, her bare feet slicing open on hidden rocks and thorns she couldn't see through the tears. Blood mixed with rainwater. She didn't care. Pain in her body felt cleaner than the agony shredding her chest from the inside. 3 days since Damian Blackwood stood on the ceremonial platform and told the entire Silvercrest pack she wasn't enough. 3 days since he used words like fragile and disappointment and mistake while 200 wolves watched her crumble. 3 days since he reached for another woman's hand, Seraphina Vale, all sharp edges and cruel beauty, and announced she would be his Luna instead. Everly had run. Not because she was a coward, because staying meant watching them seal the bond, watching him mark someone else, watching the life she'd believed in for years get handed to a stranger while the pack nodded like it made perfect sense. She collapsed against a fallen tree, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The rejection wound burned in her chest where the mate bond had been severed. Damian had done it clinically, efficiently, like cutting dead weight from a ship before it sank. Her wolf whimpered somewhere deep inside, too injured to even lift her head. "You're better off without him," Everly whispered to her. "We both are." But she didn't believe it, not yet. She'd spent 5 years beside Damian, 5 years learning to read his silences, to soften his rages, to stand in his shadow and pretend she didn't mind the cold. He'd never been warm. Even before the rejection, his affection came in calculated doses. A hand on her shoulder during pack meetings, a nod of approval when she kept quiet during disputes, a rare smile when she made herself smaller so he could look bigger. She'd mistaken control for love. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction. No moonlight broke through the canopy. Everly had no idea where she was. Somewhere far from Silvercrest territory. Somewhere no one would come looking. Damian had made it clear she was no longer his problem. Her clothes clung to her skin, soaked through. Hunger gnawed at her stomach. She hadn't eaten since the rejection ceremony. Hadn't slept. Hadn't shifted. Her wolf was too broken to answer the call. A branch snapped somewhere to her left. Everly's head jerked up. Her vision swam. She tried to stand, but her legs buckled. Rogue, her mind screamed. This far from packlands, rogues hunted freely. Wolves without allegiance, without mercy. Footsteps crunched through the underbrush, slow, deliberate. She forced herself upright, bracing against the tree. If this was how she died, fine. Maybe it was cleaner than the alternative, living with the knowledge that her own mate found her so inadequate he couldn't stand to keep her. A figure emerged from the darkness. Not a rogue. A man. Tall enough that the shadows seemed to bend around him, broad shoulders draped in a black cloak that shed rain like oil on water. His face remained hidden beneath a hood, but his presence hit her like a shockwave. Power. Old and absolute. The kind that didn't ask for submission, it commanded it on instinct. Everly's wolf stirred for the first time in days. Not in fear, in recognition. Alpha. But not just any alpha. This was something else entirely. The man stopped 10 feet away. Rain poured between them. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there like he'd been carved from stone, watching her with an intensity she could feel even without seeing his eyes. Her voice came out hoarse. "Who are you?" He tilted his head slightly. "The question is, who are you? And what are you doing bleeding out in my forest?" "Your forest." The northern hunting grounds belong to the Obsidian Crown, which means you're either very lost or very stupid. Everly's knees shook. She knew that name. Everyone did. The Obsidian Crown wasn't just a pack, it was an empire, and it belonged to one wolf. Kyle Draven, the Alpha King. Her breath caught. Impossible. The Alpha King didn't wander forests alone in the middle of storms. He ruled from a fortress days north of here. He commanded armies. He crushed rebellions. He was a legend wrapped in violence and ruthlessness. He sure as hell didn't stop to question rejected mates stumbling through the rain. "I'm lost," she whispered. Obviously. The hood shifted as he glanced at her torn dress, her bloodied feet, the way she swayed like she might collapse any second. "You're also hurt." "I'm fine. You're a terrible liar." Everly's jaw clenched. "I don't need your help. Didn't say you did, but you're going to bleed to death out here if you keep walking. So I'll ask again, who are you?" She hesitated. Giving her name felt dangerous, like handing over the last piece of herself she still owned. But what did it matter now? Damien had already taken everything worth protecting. Everly Hart. The name hung in the air between them. If he recognized it, he didn't show it. "Silvercrest Pack," he said. Not a question. A statement. "How did you—" "Your scent. Faint, but it's there." He stepped closer. She flinched. He stopped. "You ran." It wasn't a question either. Everly's throat tightened. "Yes. Why?" She almost laughed. The sound came out bitter and broken. "Because I wasn't good enough." For what? To be Luna. To stand beside an alpha. To be anything other than a disappointment. Kyle went very still. The rain seemed to quiet around him. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, darker. "Who told you that?" "My mate. Former mate. Name." She swallowed hard. "Damien Blackwood." Silence. Then Cale moved, fast. 1 second he stood 10 feet away. The next he was right in front of her, close enough that she could see the sharp line of his jaw beneath the hood, the rain dripping from dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His hand came up. She braced for a blow that never came. Instead, he caught her chin gently, so gently it shocked her more than violence would have, and tilted her face toward what little light existed. His eyes were gray, storm cloud gray, and they burned. Damien Blackwood is an idiot. Everly's heart slammed against her ribs. What? If he looked at you and saw weakness, then he's blind. Or a fool. Probably both. Her breath hitched. "You don't know me." "No. But I know men like him. They mistake kindness for fragility, mistake quiet strength for submission. He pushed you away because you made him feel small, not because you were lacking." Tears burned her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "You're wrong." "Am I?" His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away rain or tears. She couldn't tell which. "Then why are you crying?" "I'm not—" "Everly Hart," he said, and the way he spoke her name made something in her chest crack wide open. "You're standing in a storm with wounds that should have dropped you hours ago, and you're still on your feet. That's not weakness. That's survival." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But Damien's voice still echoed in her skull. Too soft. Too fragile. Mistake. Cale's hand dropped. He stepped back. "You have two options. You can stay out here and let the cold finish what your former mate started, or you can come with me. Come with you where? North. To the fortress." Her stomach dropped. "Why would you take me there?" "Because I don't leave injured wolves to die in my territory. And because—" He paused. Something in his expression shifted. Became unreadable. "Because I think you're more than what he told you, and I'd like to see if I'm right." Everly stared at him. Every instinct screamed that this was insane, following a stranger, an alpha king, into unknown territory. But what was the alternative? Wandering until she collapsed? Crawling back to Silvercrest and begging Damien to reconsider? She'd rather die. "Okay," she whispered. Cale's eyes flashed with something that might have been approval. He turned without another word and started walking. She followed. Her legs barely supported her weight, but she forced them to move. One step, then another. They walked for what felt like hours. The storm eventually broke. Dawn bled gray light through the trees. Everly's vision blurred. Her body screamed. But Kyle never looked back, never slowed. He expected her to keep up. And somehow, she did. The fortress appeared suddenly. One moment, there was forest. The next, Massive stone walls rose from the earth like they'd been carved from the mountain itself. Iron gates, guard towers, wolves patrolled the ramparts with crossbows and cold eyes. The gate opened before Kyle even reached it. Guards dropped to one knee as he passed. He ignored them. Everly stumbled after him into a courtyard that could have held Silvercrest's entire pack 3 times over. People stopped and stared. Whispers followed her like smoke. Who is she? Why did the king bring her here? Look at her clothes. She's barely standing. Kale led her through corridors of black stone and iron sconces that burned with blue flame. Upstairs, down halls. Finally, he stopped before a heavy wooden door and pushed it open. A bedroom. Massive. The bed alone was bigger than her entire room back in Silvercrest. A fire roared in the hearth. Furs covered the floor. Windows overlooked the northern mountains, snow-capped and brutal. Kale gestured inside. You'll stay here. Everly blinked. This is yours. For as long as you need it. I don't understand. Why are you helping me? He turned to face her fully. For the first time, she saw exhaustion in his eyes. Not physical, something deeper. Like he'd been carrying weight for too long and forgotten what it felt like to set it down. Because 5 years ago, someone helped me when I had nothing, and I swore if I ever had the power, I'd do the same. He started to leave, stopped, looked back, rest, heal. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what comes next. The door closed. Everly stood alone in a room that smelled like cedar and snow. Her legs finally gave out. She collapsed onto the bed. The furs were impossibly soft. The fire crackled. Outside, dawn turned the mountains gold. For the first time in 3 days, she let herself cry. Not from pain, not from grief, from something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. She woke to shouting. Everly bolted upright, heart hammering. The room was dark except for the dying fire. Outside the window, night had fallen again. How long had she been asleep? The shouting grew louder, closer. She slid out of bed, legs shaky but functional. Someone had left clean clothes folded on a chair, simple leather pants and a tunic that fit surprisingly well. She dressed quickly. The door burst open. A woman stumbled through, gasping. Blood soaked her side. Behind her, a small child, maybe 6 years old, clung to her dress, sobbing. The woman's eyes locked on Everly. Please, please help him. Everly moved on instinct. She caught the woman before she collapsed, easing her to the floor. The child screamed, his mother. His small hands pressed against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. What happened? Everly demanded. Rogues. The woman's voice rattled. They attacked the southern perimeter. Got through. My son, I tried to get him to safety. You did! Everly tore strips from the bed furs, pressing them against the wound. You got him here. You did good. The woman's eyes fluttered. So tired. Hey, stay with me. Everly's hands moved automatically, applying pressure, elevating the injury. She'd seen enough pack fights to know basic field care. This was bad, but not fatal if she worked fast. The door slammed open again. Kyle strode in. Blood splattered across his chest and arms. His eyes went wide when he saw the scene. What the hell? Rogues breached the perimeter, Everly said without looking up. She's losing blood fast. Get a healer, now. Kale didn't move. He stared at her like he'd never seen her before. Everly's head snapped up. Now, Alpha! He turned and roared into the hallway. Healer! East Wing! Footsteps thundered. Within seconds, an elderly woman rushed in with assistants carrying supplies. They took over. Everly stepped back, hands shaking and slick with blood. The child still sobbed. She knelt beside him, pulling him into her arms. He buried his face against her shoulder. Your mother's going to be okay, she whispered. I promise. These people are the best. They'll fix her up. The boy's sobs gradually quieted. He didn't let go. Kale watched from the doorway. His expression was unreadable. The healer worked efficiently. After what felt like hours, but was probably minutes, she stood and nodded. She'll live. Needs rest and time, but the wound will close clean. The child sagged in Everly's arms. Relief poured off him in waves. Kyle stepped forward. Take them both to the recovery wing. Post guards. The assistants carefully lifted the woman onto a stretcher. The boy refused to leave his mother's side. Everly walked with them until they reached a different set of rooms, smaller, warmer, with beds already prepared. As they settled the woman in, the boy finally looked at Everly. "Thank you." She squeezed his hand. "You're welcome." Back in the hallway, Cale waited. Blood still streaked his skin. His jaw was tight. "You handled that well," he said quietly. "I've seen worse." "I don't doubt it." He studied her. "Most wolves would have frozen or run. You didn't even hesitate." Everly shrugged. He needed help. So did she. Just like that. Just like that. Cale's expression shifted. Something like respect flickered across his face. "Walk with me." They moved through the fortress in silence. Everly's exhaustion had returned tenfold, but she forced herself to keep pace. They climbed stairs, emerged onto a rampart overlooking the entire northern valley. The moon hung full and heavy. Silver light bathed the mountains. Cale leaned against the stone wall. 20 rogues hit us tonight. Coordinated attack. Someone sent them." "Do you know who?" "I have suspicions." He glanced at her. "But that's not why I brought you up here." "Then why?" "Because I want to offer you something." Everly's pulse quickened. "What? A place? Here? Not as a servant, not as a guest." He turned to face her fully. "As someone who matters." She stared at him. "I don't understand." "Most wolves see strength as dominance, power, the ability to crush enemies." He gestured toward the fortress below. "I've spent 10 years building an empire on that foundation. And it works. But it's incomplete." "How?" "Because there's another kind of strength, the kind you showed tonight. Compassion under pressure, courage without violence. The ability to see someone in pain and help them without calculating what you'll gain." Everly's throat tightened. "That's not strength. That's just being decent." "No." Cale's eyes burned. "Decency is common. What you have is rare, and it's exactly what this place needs. You want me to stay. I want you to consider it. No obligations, no expectations. Just stay, heal, figure out who you are when you're not living in someone else's shadow." Her chest ached. "And if I can't figure that out, then you leave. Simple as that." She wanted to say yes. Every fiber of her being screamed to accept, but Damien's voice still whispered poison in her head. Too weak, too soft. Disappointment. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Cale nodded. "Fair enough." They stood in silence. The wind carried the scent of pine and snow. Below, the fortress lights flickered like fallen stars. Everly's hand still shook slightly from the earlier adrenaline. She clenched them into fists. Cale noticed. "You're trembling." "It's nothing. It's shock." He shrugged off his cloak and draped it over her shoulders. The fabric was heavy, warm, and smelled like leather and storm. "Go back to your room. Rest. Tomorrow, we'll talk more." She pulled the cloak tighter. "Why are you being so kind to me?" His jaw tightened. "Because no one was kind to me when I needed it most. And I remember what that felt like." He walked away before she could respond. His footsteps echoed down the stone corridor. Everly stood alone on the rampart, wrapped in an Alpha King's cloak, staring at mountains that had no idea her entire world had just shifted beneath her feet. Far to the south, in Silvercrest territory, Damien Blackwood paced his office. Seraphina sat in the corner, filing her nails with casual indifference. "You're distracted," she said without looking up. "I'm fine. You've been staring at that map for an hour. If you're having second thoughts about the northern expansion..." "I'm not." "Then what?" Damien's hands clenched. "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. 3 days since he'd severed the bond with Everly. 3 days, and he still felt the ghost of it pulling at his chest, like a wound that refused to close. He'd done the right thing. Everly was soft, too gentle for the world he was building. Seraphina understood power. She'd already started consolidating alliances, strengthening borders, eliminating weak links in the pack structure. So why did his wolf snarl every time Seraphina touched him? "You're thinking about her," Seraphina said flatly. Damien's head snapped up. "I'm not..." "Don't lie to me." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were cold. "You've been thinking about that pathetic little mouse since the moment she ran." "She wasn't pathetic." "No?" Serafina stood. Then why did you throw her away? Because she wasn't strong enough? Or because she made you feel like maybe you weren't either? His wolf snarled. Careful. Serafina smiled. It wasn't kind. I'm not Everly, Damien. I won't shrink when you growl. I won't pretend your approval matters more than my own. That's why you chose me. Remember? He did remember. He remembered wanting someone who matched his ambition, someone who wouldn't flinch when he made hard decisions, someone who could rule beside him without needing reassurance. But he also remembered the way Everly used to look at him, like he was worth something beyond power and territory, like he mattered. Serafina's voice cut through his thoughts. Forget her. She's gone. And good riddance. Damien nodded slowly. You're right. But as Serafina left the room, her heels clicking against stone, his wolf howled. And for the first time in years, Damien Blackwood wondered if he'd made a mistake. Back in the fortress, Everly lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Her mind raced with everything that had happened. The woman, the child, Khalil's offer, a place, here, as someone who matters. She wanted to believe him, but belief required something she'd lost 3 days ago. Trust. A knock sounded at her door. She sat up. Come in. A young woman entered carrying a tray of food. She set it on the table by the window and bowed slightly. The king thought you might be hungry. Everly's stomach growled traitorously. Thank you. The woman hesitated. If I may, what you did tonight, saving Mara and her son, that was brave. I just helped. Most wouldn't have. The woman smiled. My name's Lyra. If you need anything, just ask. She left before Everly could respond. The food smelled incredible. Roasted meat, fresh bread, vegetables she didn't recognize. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. When she finished, she returned to the window. The mountains glowed silver under the moonlight. Somewhere out there, Damien was probably celebrating his new Luna, strengthening his pack, moving forward without a second thought about the woman he'd discarded. And here she was, in a fortress ruled by an alpha king who looked at her like she was something valuable. It didn't make sense, but maybe that was okay. Maybe nothing had to make sense right now. Maybe she could just exist in this strange in-between space and figure out the rest later. Her wolf stirred, weak but present. We're still here, Everly whispered. The wolf's answer came as a feeling more than words. Yes. And we're not done yet. Everly pressed her hand against the cold glass. Snow had started falling, thick flakes that blanketed the world in white. Tomorrow, she'd think about Khalil's offer. Tomorrow, she'd figure out if staying was smart or suicidal. Tomorrow, she'd decide who she wanted to become. But tonight, she let herself believe just for a moment that maybe Damien had been wrong. Maybe she wasn't too soft. Maybe she was exactly strong enough. And maybe the woman everyone called weak was about to become someone no one could ignore. Dawn broke cold and sharp. Everly woke to find fresh clothes laid out again, this time sturdy boots included. Whoever kept leaving these knew her size perfectly. She dressed and ventured into the corridor. The fortress was already alive with activity. Wolves moved with military precision. No one walked. They strode with purpose. Conversations were clipped, efficient. This wasn't a pack. This was an army. Lyra appeared seemingly from nowhere. Morning, sleep well? As well as I could. The king requests your presence in the training yard. Lyra's expression was carefully neutral. When you're ready, of course. Training yard. Everly's stomach tightened. Why? He didn't say, but I'd guess he wants to see what you can do. I'm not a fighter. Lyra's smile turned knowing. Maybe that's exactly why he wants to see. They walked through corridors and courtyards until they reached an open space the size of a small field. Warriors sparred in pairs. Steel rang against steel. Grunts of effort punctuated the morning air. Kale stood in the center, watching. He wore simple training leathers. No cloak, no crown. Just an alpha among his wolves. He turned as Everly approached. His gray eyes assessed her quickly. You came. You requested. I suggested. There's a difference. He gestured around them. This is where we train. Every wolf in this fortress spends 2 hours here daily. No exceptions. Am I expected to? No. He cut her off gently. You're not a soldier, but I thought you might want to watch. See what we do here. Everly relaxed slightly. All right. They stood in silence as the warriors continued their drills. She noticed something odd. The movements weren't just about strength. They emphasized strategy, positioning, reading an opponent's tells. You train them differently, she said. Kale nodded. Most packs teach dominance. Beat your opponent into submission. I teach adaptation. A smaller wolf can defeat a larger one if they're smarter, faster, more observant. That's not how Silvercrest trained. I know. His jaw tightened. Damian Blackwood builds soldiers. I build survivors. What's the difference? Soldiers follow orders. Survivors think for themselves. He turned to her. Which one were you? Everly's breath caught. I don't know. Yes, you do. She thought about the woman last night, the blood, the child's screams. She hadn't waited for orders, hadn't asked permission. She'd just acted. A survivor, she whispered. Kale's expression softened. Exactly. A commotion erupted near the far end of the yard. Two warriors had stopped sparring and were arguing. Voices rose. One shoved the other. Kale didn't move, didn't shout. He simply walked toward them. The entire yard fell silent. Problem, he said quietly. The first warrior, a massive male with scarred arms, pointed at his opponent. He's using illegal holds. Illegal according to what standard? Pack law. There is no pack law here. Kale's voice dropped to something dangerous. There's survival law. You use whatever works. If you can't counter his hold, you learn. You don't complain, but nothing. If this were a real fight, do you think your enemy would care about fairness? He stepped closer. Do you think rogues follow rules? The warrior's jaw clenched. No, Alpha. Then adapt or die. Simple choice. Kale walked away. The yard resumed activity, but something had shifted. The warriors fought harder, smarter, like they'd been reminded what was at stake. Everly stared at Kale's back. He ruled through respect, not fear, through challenge, not domination. Damian had never understood the difference. They walked the perimeter of the yard. Kale pointed out techniques, explained strategies. His voice remained level, almost conversational, but beneath it, Everly sensed something else. Loneliness. This man commanded thousands, held absolute power, could crush enemies with a word, and he was completely alone. Can I ask you something? She said. He glanced at her. Always. Why did you really bring me here? Kale stopped walking. For a long moment he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher. Because when I saw you in that forest, bleeding and broken but still standing, I saw myself, 10 years ago, before I became this, the Alpha King, the ruler. The weapon everyone points at their problems. He looked at the mountains. I was nothing once. A rogue's bastard son. No pack. No name. Just a kid trying to survive. What changed? Someone gave me a chance, an old alpha named Theron. He saw potential where everyone else saw trash, trained me, taught me, and when he died, he left me his territory. And you built an empire. No. Kale's eyes met hers. I built a place where wolves like me could belong, where strength wasn't measured by bloodline, where worth was earned, not inherited. Everly's throat tightened. That's why you helped me. That's why I'm offering you a chance. Same as Theron offered me. He paused. But here's the truth, Everly. I can give you safety, resources, training. What I can't give you is belief in yourself. That has to come from you. And if I don't have it, then we'll find it. Together. The word together hit her like a physical blow. Damian had never said that word. Not once. Everything had been about his pack, his position, his legacy. Kale was offering partnership. A horn blasted from the fortress walls, 3 short bursts. Kale's entire body tensed. That's a distress signal. From where? The southern village. He was already moving. Stay here, like hell. Everly ran after him. They reached the gates as riders thundered in. One fell from his horse, gasping. Rogues. 50 at least. They're burning the village. Kale's expression went cold. Assemble strike team Alpha. Full gear. We leave in 5 minutes. The fortress exploded into controlled chaos. Warriors grabbed weapons, mounted horses, formed ranks with terrifying efficiency. Kale turned to Everly. You need to stay. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Those are your people down there. If they are wounded, they'll need help. She met his stare. You said I'm not a fighter. Fine, but I can heal, and I can comfort the terrified. So either take me or waste time arguing. His jaw worked. Then he nodded once. Stay behind the line. Do not engage. Understood. Understood. They rode hard. The southern village was only 20 minutes away, but smoke rose long before they reached it. Screams carried on the wind. Kael gave rapid commands. Team 1, secure the perimeter. Team 2, evacuate civilians. Team 3, with me. We hunt. The strike team moved like liquid death. Everly stayed with Team 2 as they swept through burning buildings, pulling out families, children, the elderly. A woman clutched Everly's arm. My husband. He's still inside. Where? The barn. Please. Everly ran before anyone could stop her. The barn was an inferno. Flames licked the roof. Smoke choked her lungs. She wrapped cloth around her face and plunged through the entrance. Inside, a man lay pinned beneath a fallen beam. His leg was crushed. He was conscious but fading. I've got you, Everly gasped. She grabbed the beam. Too heavy. She couldn't lift it. Her wolf surged forward. Not strong enough to shift fully, but enough. Just enough. Everly gritted her teeth and heaved. The beam moved, inch by agonizing inch. The man screamed as his leg came free. She dragged him backward. The roof groaned overhead. They were 10 feet from the door when the entire structure collapsed. Everly threw herself over the man, shielding him with her body. Timber crashed around them. Heat seared her back. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then hands grabbed her. Kael. He'd come through the flames, lifted both of them, and carried them clear just as the barn exploded into a fireball. They hit the ground hard. Everly gasped for air. Her back screamed. Burns. Bad ones. Kael's face appeared above her. His eyes were wild. What the hell were you thinking? He was dying. So you ran into a burning building. Yes. You could have died, but I didn't. Kael stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Then something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like awe. You're insane, he whispered. Probably. He helped her sit up. The man she'd saved was being tended by healers. His wife sobbed over him, thanking every god she could name. The rogue attack ended within the hour. Kael's wolves killed or captured every last one. The village was saved, though scarred. As they rode back to the fortress, Everly swayed in her saddle. The burns had blistered, her vision blurred. Kael rode close beside her. Almost there. Hold on, I'm fine. You're not. But you will be. They reached the fortress as night fell. Healers swarmed Everly immediately. She barely registered being carried to a medical wing. Laid on a bed, salves applied to her burns. When she woke hours later, Kael sat in a chair beside her bed. His elbows rested on his knees. His head hung low. He looked up as she stirred. How do you feel? Like I fought a fire and lost. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You saved that man's life. It was nothing. It was everything. He leaned forward. Do you understand what you did today? You ran into a burning building for a stranger. You prioritized his life over your own safety. That's not nothing, Everly. That's extraordinary. Her eyes burned. Not from the wounds, from something else. I just did what needed to be done. Exactly. And that's why... He stopped, shook his head. Never mind. Why what? That's why you're going to be an incredible leader. Everly's breath caught. I'm not... Yes, you are. He stood. Rest. Heal. Tomorrow, we start your real training. What training? How to lead. He left before she could argue. The door closed softly. Everly lay in the darkness, her mind racing. Leader. Her. The woman Damien called too weak to stand beside an alpha. Maybe Kael saw something Damien hadn't, or maybe he was wrong. But as sleep claimed her, Everly realized something terrifying. Part of her wanted to find out which it was. And far to the south in Silvercrest territory, Damien Blackwood received a report that made his blood run cold. Everly Hart had been seen in the northern territories. With Alpha King Kael Draven. And she'd just saved an entire village. Damien crumpled the report in his fist. Impossible. Everly couldn't lead. She couldn't inspire. She was too soft. Wasn't she? Seraphina's voice drifted from the doorway. Something wrong, darling. Damien didn't answer. He stared at the ashes in the fireplace and wondered, for the first time since the rejection, if he'd destroyed the only thing that could have made him whole. The burns healed slower than Everly expected. 3 days in the medical wing. 3 days of healers changing dressings, applying salves that smelled like pine and something bitter she couldn't identify. 3 days of lying still while her body screamed and her mind raced. Cale visited every morning. He never stayed long. Just checked her progress, exchanged a few words, and left. But his presence lingered after he was gone. Heavy, tangible, like the weight of a storm that hadn't broken yet. On the 4th day, Everly forced herself out of bed. The burns had scabbed over. Her back still felt tight, like someone had stretched her skin over a frame too small, but she could move. That was enough. She found Lyra in the corridor. Where's the Alpha King? Council chambers. Lyra hesitated. But he gave strict orders. You're supposed to rest another week. He gave orders, not requests. Lyra's lips twitched. You learn fast. The council chambers occupied the fortress's western tower. Everly climbed stairs that seemed endless, each step pulling at the healing skin on her back. By the time she reached the top, sweat dampened her collar. Voices drifted through the heavy door. Male. Aggressive. She pushed it open without knocking. 6 men sat around a massive table carved from black oak. Maps covered every surface. Markers indicated territories, resources, trade routes. Cale stood at the head, arms crossed, face carved from stone. Every head turned as Everly entered. The silence was immediate and absolute. One of the men, gray-haired, broad-shouldered, with scars crossing his throat, spoke first. Who the hell is this? Cale's expression didn't change. Everly Hart. She's staying at the fortress. As what? A pet. Everly's wolf snarled. She forced her voice calm. As someone who doesn't appreciate being discussed, like, I'm not standing right here. The scarred man's eyebrows rose. She's got a mouth on her, and ears that work perfectly. Everly stepped further into the room. If I'm interrupting something classified, say so. Otherwise, stop talking about me like I'm furniture. Another man, younger, with cruel eyes, laughed. I like her. She's got more spine than half your council, Kyle. Careful, Marcus. Cale's voice dropped to something dangerous. You're one insult away from losing teeth. Marcus's smile vanished. Kyle gestured to an empty chair. Sit. If you're going to barge into strategic meetings, you might as well hear what we're dealing with. Everly sat. The chair felt too big. Every man at the table radiated power, not the performative kind Damien had wielded, but the earned kind. Wolves who'd fought for their positions and kept them through blood and intelligence. She suddenly understood why Kyle ruled the North. These men didn't follow him out of obligation. They followed because he was better than them. And they knew it. The scarred man leaned back. We were discussing the rogue problem. 50 wolves don't organize spontaneous attacks. Someone's funding them, supplying them, pointing them at our borders. Who? Everly asked. That's what we're trying to figure out. Kyle tapped a marker on the southern border. The attack started 3 months ago. Small at first, scouts probing defenses. Now they're hitting villages, killing civilians. What do they want? Territory, resources. Maybe just chaos. Marcus shrugged. Rogues don't need complex motives. They're animals. They're wolves. Everly's voice cut across the table. Just like us, desperate wolves do desperate things. Find out what made them desperate, and you'll find who's behind it. The room went quiet again, but this time the quality of the silence had changed, less dismissive, more considering. The scarred man studied her. What's your name again? Everly Hart. You from around here. Silvercrest. Originally. His eyes sharpened. Damien Blackwood's pack. Former pack. Ah. He nodded slowly. Heard about that. Public rejection. Chose some vicious female over you. That must have stung. Everly's jaw tightened. Are we discussing strategy or my personal history? Just trying to understand who's sitting at my table, girl. I'm not a girl. And if understanding who I am requires gossiping about my former mate, then you're not as smart as you think you are. Marcus laughed outright. Oh, she's perfect. Kael, where did you find her? In my forest. Bleeding. Kael's eyes never left Everly, and she's been surprising me ever since. The scarred man grunted. Fine. Everly Hart from Silvercrest. You think the rogues are desperate. What makes someone that desperate? Starvation. Everly spoke without thinking. When packs control all the good hunting grounds, rogues get pushed into dead zones. No prey, no resources. Eventually they either die or fight. So we're supposed to feel sorry for them. Marcus's tone dripped sarcasm. No. You're supposed to understand them. Pity doesn't win wars. Intelligence does. Kael's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. She's right. If we want to stop the attacks, we need to cut off the supply line. Find whoever's feeding them promises they can't deliver on their own. The meeting continued for 2 hours. Everly mostly listened, but when she spoke, the men paid attention. Not because she was loud, because she was precise. She asked questions they hadn't considered, pointed out logistics they'd overlooked. By the time the council adjourned, something had shifted, the way the men looked at her. Not with contempt, with calculation. Kael walked her back down the stairs. You shouldn't have been out of bed. Probably not. You're still healing. I'm functional. That's enough. He stopped on a landing overlooking the training yard. Functional isn't the same as whole. When has whole ever been a requirement for survival? Kael turned to face her. His gray eyes searched hers like he was looking for something specific. When did you get so cynical? The day my mate told me I was worthless in front of 200 wolves. Everly met his stare. Cynicism is just pattern recognition with scars. Fair enough. They stood in silence. Below, warriors trained. Steel rang. Bodies moved with deadly grace. Why did you let me stay in that meeting? Everly asked quietly. Because you earned it. How? I just walked in. No. You walked in, refused to be dismissed, and contributed something valuable. That's not luck. That's capability. He paused. Most wolves spend years trying to prove they belong in strategy sessions. You did it in 20 minutes. I didn't prove anything. I just asked questions. The right questions. That's rarer than you think. Everly's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but Damien's voice still echoed. Too soft. Too weak. Disappointment. Kael seemed to read her thoughts. He's in your head. Who? Damien. Everything you do, you're measuring against what he told you, trying to prove him wrong. Aren't I? No. Kael's voice was firm. You're trying to prove yourself right. There's a difference. One gives him power over you, the other takes it back. And which one am I doing? That's what you need to figure out. He continued down the stairs. Everly watched him go. His words settled into her bones like stones. That night, she couldn't sleep. The burns ached. Her mind wouldn't stop turning over the meeting, the maps, the way those men had looked at her. She dressed and wandered the fortress. Most wolves had retired for the night. Torches burned low in their sconces. Her footsteps echoed. She found herself in the library. Massive, shelves stretched to a vaulted ceiling. Books lined every wall, histories, strategies, philosophies written in languages she didn't recognize. One book lay open on a reading table. She approached. The text was written in sharp, angular script. Pack dynamics and the evolution of leadership. Someone cleared their throat behind her. Everly spun. The scarred man from the council stood in the doorway. She tensed. Relax, I'm not here to fight. He moved to the table. That's my book. Been reading it for 3 weeks, trying to understand why some packs thrive while others collapse. Find any answers? A few. He sat heavily. Name's Garrett, by the way, commander of Kael's Southern Forces. Everly. I know. He studied her. You made an impression today. I asked some questions. You challenged Marcus. No one challenges Marcus. He's got a temper like a forest fire and a grudge complex that lasts decades. He was being an ass. Garrett laughed. Yeah, he was, and you called him on it. That takes guts, or stupidity. Haven't decided which yet. Why would it be stupid? Because men like Marcus don't forget slights, and they don't forgive women who make them look small. Then Marcus needs thicker skin. Probably. Garrett leaned back. But here's what you need to understand about this place. Kale's council isn't like regular pack hierarchy. We don't have ranks based on bloodline. We earn our seats, and we defend them, constantly. Against what? Each other. Challengers. Wolves who think they can do better. It's brutal, but it works. Sounds exhausting. It is. Garrett's scarred throat flexed as he swallowed. But it's also honest. No one's here because of who their father was. We're here because we bled for it. Everly sat across from him. Why are you telling me this? Because Kael's interested in you. And when Kael's interested in someone, the rest of us pay attention. I'm not... Don't! Garrett's eyes hardened. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending you don't see it. The way he looks at you. The way he talks about you when you're not around. He hasn't looked at anyone like that in 10 years. Her pulse quickened. He barely knows me. He knows enough. Garrett stood. Just be careful. Kael's a good king, but he's still a wolf, and wolves are possessive by nature. Once we decide something's ours, we don't let go easy. I'm not a possession. Tell him that. Not me. Garrett left. Everly sat alone in the library, heart hammering. Kael was interested in her. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it kindled something she'd thought Damien had extinguished. Want. Not romantic, not yet, but the desire to be seen, to be valued, to matter to someone who didn't need her but chose her anyway. She returned to her room as dawn broke. Sleep finally claimed her. She dreamed of gray eyes and storms. Training began the next morning. Kael woke her before sunrise. He didn't ask if she was ready, just told her to dress and meet him in the yard. When she arrived, the entire fortress seemed to be watching. Warriors lined the perimeter. Council members observed from the ramparts. Kael stood in the center, arms crossed. Today we start your real education. In what? Leadership. He gestured around them. Every wolf here knows how to fight. That's baseline. What separates a fighter from a leader is the ability to make decisions under pressure, to inspire loyalty, to see 10 moves ahead while everyone else is stuck on the next one. And you think I can do that? I think you already have. You just don't know it yet. He spent the next 3 hours putting her through scenarios, hypothetical attacks, supply shortages, internal conflicts. Each time he forced her to make a call. Fast, no hesitation. A village is burning. You have 20 warriors. The rogues outnumber you 3-1. What do you do? Everly's mind raced. Evacuate the civilians first. Warriors create a defensive perimeter. We don't engage unless necessary. Why not engage? Because winning isn't always about killing the enemy. Sometimes it's about protecting what matters and living to fight another day. Kael nodded. Good. Next scenario. They continued until the sun reached its peak. Everly's legs shook. Her voice had gone hoarse, but she answered every question, made every call. Finally, Kael stopped. How do you feel? Like I just fought a war. You did, just not with swords. He handed her water. She drank greedily. Most wolves think leadership is about dominance, being the strongest, the loudest, the most feared. It's not. No, it's about trust. If your wolves don't trust your judgment, they won't follow you into danger. And trust isn't demanded, it's earned. How do you earn it? By making the hard calls, by putting their lives before your pride, by admitting when you're wrong. His eyes met hers. Damien never learned that lesson. The mention of Damien's name made her chest tighten. He thought trust was automatic. That being alpha meant automatic obedience. That's why his pack's already fracturing. Everly's head snapped up. What? Kael's expression remained neutral. My scouts report Silvercrest's having internal problems. Seraphina's consolidating power too aggressively, making enemies. Damien's losing control of his own council. When did this happen? Started about 2 weeks ago, right after you left. Coincidence? Maybe. Kael shrugged. Or maybe you were the glue holding things together and he was too stupid to realize it. That's not possible. I didn't have any authority. I was just what? The mate of an alpha. The woman who attended every meeting, mediated every dispute, remembered every wolf's name and story. You think that didn't matter? Everly couldn't speak. She'd never considered herself important to Silvercrest's function. She'd just done what needed doing, kept things running smoothly, made sure people felt heard. She'd thought it was nothing. Apparently she'd been wrong. Damien's bleeding support. Kale continued. And Seraphina's making it worse with every decision. Give it another month, and he'll have a full rebellion on his hands. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand something. The strength Damien wanted wasn't what his pack needed. They needed someone who could hold them together, someone who cared more about the pack than personal glory. Someone like me. Kale's silence was answer enough. That afternoon, Everly sat on the ramparts watching the mountains. The information about Silvercrest churned in her gut. Part of her felt vindicated. Damien had thrown her away and was now paying the price. But another part felt hollow. Those were still her people. Wolves she'd known for years. And they were suffering. Lyra found her. You okay? Thinking. About what? Whether I'm allowed to care about people who watched me get humiliated and did nothing? That's a complicated question. Yeah. Lyra sat beside her. For what it's worth, I think caring about them anyway says more about your character than their silence said about theirs. Or it makes me pathetic. No. Lyra's voice was firm. It makes you strong. Holding grudges is easy. Forgiveness is hard. And choosing to care even when it costs you? That's power. Everly wanted to believe that. But part of her still felt like the broken girl who'd stumbled through the rain. Worthless. Discarded. Kael appeared behind them. Lyra, give us a moment. Lyra left without argument. Kael leaned against the stone wall beside Everly. You're thinking about going back, he said quietly. No. Don't lie to me. Everly's jaw clenched. Fine. I'm thinking about it, wondering if maybe I could help, fix whatever's breaking before it's too late. Why? Because despite everything, they're still my pack. Or they were. Damien rejected you, publicly, humiliated you, and you want to save his ass. I don't want to save him. I want to save them. There's a difference. Kael studied her for a long moment. If you go back, he'll use you. Promise change. Swear things will be different. And the second you're useful again, he'll discard you, just like before. Maybe. Or maybe I'm stronger now, strong enough to help on my terms. Not his. And if he refuses, then I leave. Again. Kael's expression darkened. Something dangerous flickered across his face, gone before she could name it. You don't owe them anything, Everly. I know. Then why risk it? Because staying bitter is exhausting. And I'm tired of letting Damien's rejection define me. The words hung between them. Kael's jaw worked like he was chewing on something he didn't want to say. Finally, he spoke. If you go, I'm sending wolves with you. I don't need non-negotiable. His voice left no room for argument. You walk into Silvercrest territory alone, you become a target. Damien's pride is wounded. Seraphina sees you as competition. That's a dangerous combination. I can handle myself. I know you can, but you don't have to. The weight of his words settled over her. For 5 years, she'd handled everything alone. Damien had been there, but not really. Not in the ways that mattered. Kael was offering backup, partnership, the thing Damien had never given her. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded once. We leave in 3 days. That gives you time to prepare, and me time to select the right wolves. Wait, you think I'm letting you walk into hostile territory without me? Kael's eyes hardened. Think again. That's not necessary. Again, non-negotiable. Why? Why would you risk your position for this? Kael turned to face her fully. Because in the last week you've reminded me why I built this place. Not to accumulate power, not to crush enemies, but to give wolves a chance to be more than what others decided they were. He paused. And because I'll be damned if I let Damien Blackwood break you twice. Everly's breath caught. The intensity in his gaze burned. Not with dominance, with something else. Something that made her pulse race and her wolf stir. Kael stepped closer. One more thing. What? If we do this, if we walk into Silvercrest and help them survive their own stupidity, you're doing it as my emissary, not as Damien's former mate, not as a rejected wolf crawling back. You represent the Obsidian Crown, which means you represent me. And what does that mean? It means when you speak with the authority of the Northern Territories. When you make decisions, they carry the weight of my backing. And when anyone questions whether you belong, they're questioning me. That's a lot of power to hand someone you barely know. I know enough. His hand came up, cupping her jaw. Not possessive. Grounding. You're not broken, Everly. You never were. You were just surrounded by blind idiots who couldn't see what they had. The world narrowed to his touch, his eyes. The space between their bodies that suddenly felt too small and too vast at once. Then he dropped his hand and stepped back. 3 days. Be ready. He walked away. Everly stood frozen, heart slamming against her ribs. Her skin still tingled where he'd touched her. She was in trouble. Deep, complicated trouble. Because the Alpha King wasn't just offering her protection or backing. He was offering something far more dangerous. Belief. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Kale trained her relentlessly. Not in combat, she'd never be a warrior. But in negotiation. In reading power dynamics. In understanding when to push and when to yield. He taught her the language of alphas, the subtle dominance plays, the way wolves tested boundaries without words, how to hold her ground without aggression. You don't need to be the strongest wolf in the room, he told her. You need to be the smartest, the one who sees the game 3 moves before anyone else plays their hand. And if I can't, then you call me, and I'll burn the room down. The casual violence in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, it steadied her. Kyle wasn't threatening. He was promising. There was a difference. On the second night, Garrett pulled her aside. Got a minute? Always. They walked the fortress walls. The northern lights danced overhead, green and violet ribbons across black sky. Kale told me about Silvercrest, Garrett said. About going back. And I think it's a mistake, Everly bristled. You don't know. I know Damian Blackwood. Met him twice. Both times he struck me as the kind of wolf who mistakes cruelty for strength. Men like that don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are. Maybe. But I'm not going back for him. Then why? For me. To prove I can walk back into the place that destroyed me and not crumble. Garrett grunted. That's fair. Just watch your back. And watch Kale's. Why would I need to watch Kale's? Because he's getting attached. And attached wolves make stupid decisions, protective decisions, the kind that start wars. Kale's not. He is. Garrett stopped walking. 10 years I've served him. 10 years I've watched him rule with cold precision, no emotion, no weakness. Then you show up and suddenly he's training you personally, attending council meetings, planning trips to rival territories to protect you. He's helping me. He's claiming you. Maybe not consciously, but his wolf knows. And sooner or later, his human side will catch up. Everly's stomach twisted. I'm not his to claim. Tell him that before you leave. Because if you don't, and something happens in Silvercrest, Kyle will raise that territory to ash. And damn the consequences. Garrett walked away. Everly stood alone beneath the northern lights, fear coiling in her chest. Not of Kyle, of what his protection might cost. She found him in the strategy room. Maps covered the table. He was marking routes, calculating travel times. We need to talk, she said. He didn't look up. About, Garrett thinks you're getting too attached. Garrett worries too much. Is he wrong? Kale's hand stilled. The quill hovered over parchment. Slowly, he straightened, met her eyes. What do you want me to say, Everly? The truth. The truth is I've spent 10 years building an empire, consolidating power, making sure no one could ever push me around again. And I did it alone, because alone was safer. He paused. Then you stumbled into my forest, bleeding and broken, and every instinct I'd buried came roaring back. What instinct? To protect, to claim, to look at someone and think mine. Her breath caught. Kyle, I know what that sounds like. Possessive, dangerous. Maybe it is, but I'm not Damian. I don't need to own you to value you. I don't need to diminish you to feel powerful. Then what do you need? His eyes burned. I need you to understand that when we walk into Silvercrest, it won't just be politics. It'll be personal, because Damian hurt you. And every time I think about that, my wolf wants blood. You can't kill an alpha over a rejected bond. I can do whatever the hell I want. I'm the king. That's not how this works. Isn't it? Kale moved around the table, closed the distance between them. I've started wars over less. Burn territories for smaller insults. You think I won't do the same for you? I don't want you to. Too bad. His voice dropped. Because it's already done. The second I decided to help you, I chose a side. And I don't do anything halfway. This is insane. Probably. But insanity's just passion without permission. They stood inches apart. Everly could feel heat radiating off him. Could smell leather and storms and something wilder. Dangerous. If I let you do this, if I let you walk into Silvercrest playing protector, what does that make me? She whispered. Another weak female hiding behind a strong male. No. It makes you smart, using available resources, accepting backup when it's offered. That's not weakness. That's strategy. And if Damien sees it as me running to another alpha, then Damien's as stupid as I think he is. Everly wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle this alone. But the truth was, she couldn't, not safely. And pretending otherwise was pride, not strength. Fine, we go together. But I lead the negotiations. Agreed. And you don't threaten anyone unless I ask. Can't promise that. KL. His lips curved. Fine, I won't threaten anyone unprovoked. Good enough. They finalized plans. At dawn, a convoy of 12 wolves would ride south. Enough to make a statement, but not so many it looked like an invasion. Kale would lead, Everly would speak, and whatever happened in Silvercrest, they'd face it together. That night, Everly couldn't sleep. She stood at her window watching snow fall. Thick flakes that covered the world in white silence. Tomorrow she'd face Damien for the first time since the rejection. Tomorrow, she'd walk back into the pack that watched her crumble and did nothing. Tomorrow, everything would change. A knock sounded. She opened the door. Kale stood in the corridor, still dressed, looking like he hadn't slept either. Couldn't rest, he said. Me neither. Want company? She stepped aside. He entered. They sat by the fire without speaking. Sometimes silence was its own conversation. Finally, Kale spoke. Whatever happens tomorrow, you don't apologize. You don't explain. You walk in like you own the ground beneath your feet. Because you do. What if I don't feel like I do? Fake it. Confidence is half performance anyway, and the other half, believing your own performance. Everly smiled despite herself. That's terrible advice. It's the only advice that works. He stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. He moved toward the door, stopped, looked back. For what it's worth, I'm glad you stumbled into my forest, even though I've complicated everything, especially because of that. Complicated means interesting, and I was getting bored. He left. Everly lay down. Sleep finally came. She dreamed of gray eyes and burning buildings and a voice that whispered, "You're not broken." Dawn broke cold. The convoy assembled. 12 wolves on horseback, Kyle at the front, Everly beside him, Garrett and Marcus flanking. They rode south. The journey took most of the day. By the time Silvercrest territory appeared on the horizon, the sun hung low and red. Kale raised his hand. The convoy stopped. Last chance to turn back, he said quietly. Everly stared at the distant borders, at the land she'd called home for 5 years, at the place that had destroyed her. No. Her voice was steady. We finished this. They crossed into Silvercrest land. Scouts spotted them immediately. Within minutes, a patrol intercepted. State your business, the lead scout demanded. Diplomatic visit, Kale said calmly. I'm here to speak with Alpha Blackwood, the Alpha King. The scout's eyes went wide. With all respect, sir, we'll need to escort you. Of course. They rode into packlands. Wolves lined the paths. Whispers followed. The Alpha King is here. Why? Who's that woman beside him? Then someone recognized her. That's Everly. Everly Hart. She's back. The whispers turned to murmurs. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Everly kept her eyes forward, didn't flinch, didn't waver. They reached the main hall. Damien stood on the steps, Serafina beside him. Both looked shocked. Kale dismounted, offered his hand to Everly. She took it. They walked forward together. Damien's eyes locked on Everly. His expression cycled through emotions too fast to track. Shock, confusion. Something that might have been regret. Alpha Blackwood, Kale said formally. Thank you for receiving us. Damien tore his gaze from Everly. Alpha King Draven. This is unexpected. I've heard concerning reports about instability in your pack. I thought a personal visit might clarify the situation. We're handling internal matters. Are you? Kale's tone remained pleasant. Because my scouts tell a different story. Damien's jaw clenched. With respect, our internal affairs are none of your concern. They are when they threaten northern stability. Unstable packs breed rogue activity, which affects my territories. Seraphina stepped forward. We appreciate your concern, Alpha King, but as my mate said, we're managing things. Kale's eyes cut to her, dismissed her, looked back at Damien. I'm not here to interfere. I'm here to offer assistance. If you want it, and if we don't, then I leave. And watch your pack collapse from a distance. Tension crackled, Damien's hands fisted. Everly could see him calculating. Pride versus pragmatism. Finally, he spoke. Fine, let's talk inside. They entered the hall, the same hall where Damien had rejected Everly. She forced herself not to react, not to remember standing on that platform while he called her worthless. Kale's hand touched the small of her back. Brief, grounding. She steadied. Damien led them to his private office, dismissed everyone except Seraphina. Then he turned to Everly. Why are you here? His voice cracked on the last word. Raw, wounded. Everly met his eyes. Because someone needs to fix the mess you made, and apparently that someone is still me. Seraphina's expression went cold. Careful, little wolf. Everly's eyes cut to her. I'm not your little anything, and if you interrupt me again, you'll learn exactly how careful I'm not. Kale's lips twitched, but he said nothing, just stood there radiating quiet menace. Damien's throat worked. Everly, I don't understand. You left. You were gone. You threw me away. There's a difference. I made a mistake. The words dropped like stones. Silence. Then Everly laughed. Bitter, sharp. You made a mistake. That's what you're going with. Not I destroyed you. Not I humiliated you in front of everyone. A mistake. Like you forgot to sign a treaty or miscounted supplies. I was wrong, Damien pressed. About you. About what strength means. Seraphina's tearing the pack apart. And I can't stop it, because everything she does, I would have done. And it's killing us. So now you want me back. Everly's voice could have cut glass. Now I'm asking for help. Please. The plea hung in the air. Everly looked at the man who'd once been her entire world, saw the cracks in his armor, the desperation in his eyes, and felt nothing, not anger, not vindication, not even pity, just emptiness where love used to live. I'll help your pack, she said quietly, because they don't deserve to suffer for your stupidity. But not for you, never for you again. Damien flinched like she'd struck him. Seraphina's eyes blazed. You think you can just walk back in here and... You're done, Everly said flatly. Whatever position you think you hold, it ends now. Because every decision you've made has weakened this pack. And I'm not going to watch you finish the job. You have no authority here. Kale spoke for the first time since they entered. She has mine, which means she has all the authority she needs. Seraphina's face went white. You wouldn't. Try me. Damien looked between them. Understanding dawned. Horror followed. You're with him now, the Alpha King. Everly's chin lifted. I'm with no one. But Kael sees value in me, something you never did. So yes, I'm here under his protection and his backing, which means if you or your mate do anything to undermine me, you're not just dealing with a rejected bond. You're dealing with the Northern Territories. Damien's wolf flashed in his eyes. Dominance, possession, mine, it snarled. Kael moved, fast. 1 second he stood behind Everly. The next he was in Damien's space, inches away, eyes pure alpha dominance. Say that again, Kael whispered. I dare you. Damien held his ground. Barely. You can't claim another alpha's mate. She's not your mate. You severed that bond yourself. The rejection doesn't erase it. It erases everything. Kael's voice dropped to something inhuman. You gave up your right to her the second you chose another woman. So whatever you're feeling right now, regret, jealousy, territorial bullshit, swallow it. Because if you come at her with that dominance posturing again, I'll rip your throat out, king or not. The office went deathly silent. Finally, Damien stepped back, looked away. Submission, not total, but enough. Kale returned to Everly's side. She was shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from watching two alphas nearly kill each other over her. I'll help you stabilize the pack, she said. Her voice didn't waver. I'll mediate disputes, rebuild trust, fix what's broken. But then I leave, and you don't follow, you don't contact me, you don't send wolves to check on me. I'm not yours anymore, Damien. I never really was. His eyes glistened. Everly, accept the terms, or we walk, now. Damien looked at Serafina, at Kael, at Everly. The woman he'd thrown away. The woman who'd come back stronger than he'd ever imagined possible. Fine, he whispered. Help us. Then go. Everly nodded once. We start tomorrow. They left the office, walked through halls that felt smaller than Everly remembered. Damien followed at a distance, broken, lost. Serafina caught Everly's arm in the corridor. You think you've won. I think I survived. There's a difference. He'll never forget you now. You know that. You've ruined him for anyone else. Then maybe he'll finally understand how I felt. Everly pulled free, walked out into the fading light. Kael waited by the horses. That was brutal, he said quietly. That was necessary. He studied her. You okay? No, but I will be. They mounted. Rode to the guest quarters Damien had prepared, a full wing of his compound, far from his private rooms, close enough to watch. That night, Everly stood on the balcony staring at stars. Behind her, the door opened. Kael. Can't sleep. Too much adrenaline. He stood beside her. You did well today. I destroyed him. He destroyed himself. You just showed him the rubble. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Does it? Everly thought about it. Maybe. They stood in comfortable silence. Finally, Kael spoke. When this is over, when you fixed his mess and walked away, what then? I don't know. Come back north. His voice was quiet. Not as a guest. As something more. What more? Whatever you want it to be. Advisor, emissary, partner. He paused. Mine. Everly's breath caught. Kael, I know it's too soon. I know you're still healing, but I need you to know, when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm here, and if I'm never ready, then I wait. That's not fair to you. Life's not fair. He turned to face her. But this is whatever you need, however long it takes. I'm not going anywhere. Everly looked at the man who'd saved her, who'd believed in her when everyone else saw broken pieces, who'd walked into hostile territory because she asked. And for the first time since Damien's rejection, she felt something shift in her chest. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The hope. Thank you, she whispered. Kael nodded, touched her cheek once, then left her alone with the stars and the weight of impossible choices. Tomorrow, she'd rebuild Damien's pack, prove she was more than his rejection, more than her pain. But tonight, she let herself imagine a future where gray eyes and quiet promises were enough, where broken girls became queens not through violence but through refusing to stay shattered. And in his private chambers, Damien Blackwood stared at the wall and realized he'd lost the only battle that ever mattered, the one where Everly Hart became someone else's possibility, someone else's future, someone else's everything. Everly woke to screaming. She bolted upright, heart slamming. The guest quarters were dark except for firelight bleeding under the door. Smoke, thick and acrid. She grabbed her cloak and burst into the corridor. Wolves ran in every direction. Panic radiated like heat. Through the chaos, she spotted Kael emerging from his room across the hall. What's happening? She shouted. Fire! South wing. His eyes were already calculating. Stay close. They ran toward the source. The south wing housed Damien's council chambers. Storage. Records. By the time they reached it, flames consumed entire sections. The heat was monstrous. Warriors formed bucket lines, but the fire spread faster than they could contain it. Damien appeared through the smoke, face streaked with ash. His eyes locked on Everly. Where's Serafina? I don't know. I just woke up. She was in the council room, reviewing trade agreements. He grabbed a warrior. Anyone see Luna Serafina? The warrior shook his head. No one's come out of that wing, Alpha. Damien's face went white. She's still in there. Before anyone could stop him, he charged toward the flames. Kyle cursed and followed. Everly ran after them both, ignoring the shouts behind her. The heat inside was unbearable. Smoke choked her lungs. She could barely see 3 feet ahead. Kale's hand found her shoulder, pulling her close. Stay behind me, he ordered. They pushed deeper. Timbers cracked overhead. The structure was collapsing. Through the haze, Everly spotted Damien ahead, kicking down a door. The council room. Serafina lay on the floor, unconscious. Damien scooped her up, turned to run. A beam gave way directly above him. Kale moved, shoved Damien aside. The beam crashed down, missing Damien by inches. But the impact sent debris flying. Something struck Kyle's temple. Blood poured. He staggered. Everly caught him before he fell. We have to move. Now. Damien hesitated, looked at Kale, then at Everly. For one terrible moment, she saw the calculation in his eyes. The choice. Then he grabbed Kyle's other arm. Together, they dragged him toward the exit. Serafina remained unconscious in Damien's other arm, dead weight. They burst through the main doors as the south wing collapsed behind them. The explosion of heat and sound knocked them forward. Everly hit the ground hard, Kyle's weight crushing her. Healers swarmed. They pulled Kale away, checking his head wound. Damien laid Serafina down. She was breathing, smoke inhalation, but alive. Everly sat up, coughing. Her lungs burned. Her hands were blistered from the heat, but she was intact. Kyle's eyes opened, found hers immediately. You okay? I'm fine. You're the one bleeding. I've had worse. He tried to sit up. The healers pushed him back down. Stay still, one snapped. That's a concussion. I don't have time for a concussion. Too bad. You've got one anyway. Garrett appeared, face grim. Alpha King. We need to talk. Kale waved off the healers and stood, swayed slightly. Everly moved to his side. He didn't push her away. What is it? Kale demanded. The fire wasn't an accident. Garrett's voice was flat. We found accelerant, oil, deliberately spread through the support beams. Someone set this. Yes. Who? We don't know yet. But whoever did it knew the building's layout, knew where to strike for maximum damage. Kale's jaw clenched. How many dead? 3. 2 servants, 1 guard. Everly's stomach dropped. 3 lives. Gone. Because someone wanted to send a message or hide something or create chaos. Damien approached, overhearing. My council records. All of them. Burned. What was in those records? Kyle asked quietly. Everything. Trade agreements, financial accounts, territory disputes, years of documentation. Convenient. Damien's eyes narrowed. You think I did this? I think someone benefited from those records disappearing, and I think timing's interesting. I would never endanger my own mate. Kale's hand shot out, grabbing Damien's collar. Your mate was conveniently reviewing documents alone in a section that got torched. Your records conveniently destroyed. Your pack conveniently destabilized further. So either you're an idiot or you're complicit. Damien shoved him back. I'm trying to save my pack. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, every move you've made has weakened it further. That's not enough. Everly stepped between them. Fighting each other won't find who did this. We need to investigate. Now, before the trail goes cold. Both alphas stared at her. Then Kale nodded. She's right. Garrett, assemble a team. I want every wolf who had access to that wing questioned. I want accelerant sources tracked. And I want it done before dawn. Garrett saluted and left. Damien ran a hand through his ash-covered hair. Serafina could have died. But she didn't. Everly kept her voice neutral. Which raises the question, why was she really there? What's that supposed to mean? Council records aren't usually reviewed alone at night, especially trade agreements. That's day work, with witnesses. She's thorough, or she was looking for something specific. Damien's expression darkened. You're accusing my mate of arson. I'm suggesting we don't know enough to accuse anyone. Yet. The investigation began immediately. Kael's wolves moved through the compound with cold efficiency. Every room searched, every wolf questioned. Everly watched from the sidelines as patterns emerged. Serafina had dismissed her personal guards 2 hours before the fire started. She'd sent the night servants away early, and she'd been alone in the council room for 90 minutes before the flames began. The accelerant came from the stables, oil used for saddle leather. Anyone could access it, but only someone with authority could move through the south wing unquestioned. By dawn, Serafina had regained consciousness. Healers cleared her medically. Kael requested she join them in Damien's office. Private. Just the 4 of them. She entered looking pale but composed. Damien hovered protectively. Kael leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Everly stood by the window, watching. "How are you feeling?" Kael asked. His tone was pleasant. Too pleasant. Like I was almost burned alive. Serafina's voice carried an edge. "Why am I being questioned like a criminal? Because the evidence suggests this wasn't random." "What evidence?" "You dismissed your guards, sent servants away, spent 90 minutes alone in a room that became the fire's epicenter." Kael's eyes never left hers. "And the only records destroyed were ones that might reveal financial discrepancies." "There are no financial discrepancies." "Then you won't mind us reviewing the backup ledgers." "Garrett's already retrieving them from the northern vault." Serafina's composure cracked. Just slightly, a flicker of something that might have been panic. "Those are private pack documents." "Not anymore." Kael pushed off the desk. "The moment this fire killed 3 wolves, it became my business. Because arson that crosses into my territory's interests gives me jurisdiction. You have no jurisdiction here." "Want to test that theory?" Damien stepped forward. "Serafina, if there's something you need to tell me, now's the time." She looked at him. Her expression shifted. Softened, vulnerable. "Damien, I swear I had nothing to do with this. I was reviewing trade contracts. I must have knocked over a lamp." "I don't remember." The smoke. "You remember dismissing your guards," Everly said quietly. "You remember sending servants away. You remember 90 minutes of solitary work, but you don't remember knocking over a lamp." "I was focused enough to take precautions against interruption, but not focused enough to notice starting a fire." Serafina's eyes went cold. "You've hated me since you got here. You want Damien back. So you're twisting everything to make me look guilty." Everly stepped closer. "I don't want Damien, but I do want the truth. And you're lying. How dare you? Because your story doesn't make sense." Everly's voice remained level. "Experienced wolves don't knock over lamps. We're too aware of our surroundings. And even if you did, you would have smelled smoke immediately, felt heat. You would have had time to extinguish it or escape. But you were found unconscious, which means either you're spectacularly incompetent or you were drugged, or you're lying about being in that room when the fire started." The room went silent. Damien stared at Serafina, searching her face for something. Truth, lies, anything familiar. "Tell me she's wrong," he said quietly. Serafina's mask slipped, just for a second, long enough for Everly to see what lived beneath. Not guilt, not innocence, calculation. "This is ridiculous," Serafina snapped. "I'm being accused of burning down my own home." "Not your home." Everly's voice cut like a blade. "Damien's home, his pack, his records. You've been here 3 weeks. You don't have history. You have ambition. And what's wrong with ambition?" "Nothing. Unless it involves destroying the very thing you're supposed to protect." Garrett entered without knocking. "Alpha King, you need to see this." He held a ledger. Old, leather-bound. The backup records from the northern vault. Kael took it, flipped through pages. His expression went cold. "Damien, come here." Damien approached. Kael showed him an entry. Everly watched Damien's face drain of color. "What is it?" she asked. Kael's voice was ice. "Your mate has been embezzling pack funds for months, funneling money to offshore accounts, using trade agreements as cover. That's not possible." Damien grabbed the ledger. "Read the entries." His hand shook. "Serafina, tell me this is wrong." Serafina stood frozen, her composure finally shattered. She looked like a cornered animal calculating escape routes. "How much?" Damien whispered. Kael checked the totals. "Roughly 200,000. maybe more. These are just the transactions we can trace. 200. Damien's voice broke. Why? Serafina's chin lifted. Because your pack was dying. Someone had to make hard choices. By stealing. By securing resources for when everything collapsed. Which it was going to. You were weak. Indecisive. Sentimental. I did what needed to be done. You betrayed me. I saved myself. There's a difference. Damien moved fast. His hand closed around her throat. Not tight enough to choke. But the threat was clear. You used me. You used my pack. For money. For survival. Serafina didn't struggle. Her eyes met his without flinching. And if you're honest, you'll admit you knew. Deep down. You knew I didn't love you. I loved what you could give me. Power, status, resources. And when those ran dry, I made sure I'd have a backup. You burned the records to hide the theft. I burned the records to buy time. But clearly, I underestimated the Northern King's thoroughness. Kael's voice was colder than Everly had ever heard. You killed 3 wolves. For money. Serafina finally looked rattled. That was an accident. The fire spread faster than I planned. I only meant to destroy the council room. Only. Kael stepped closer. You only meant to commit arson. How noble. I'm not asking for your understanding. Good, because you won't get it. Damien released her, stepped back. His face was a mask of devastation. Get out. Serafina blinked. What? Get out of my territory. Out of my pack. I don't care where you go. But if you're still here in 1 hour, I'll let Kael kill you, and I won't stop him. Damien. Now. Serafina looked around the room. At Damien, at Kael, at Everly. Her expression cycled through emotions. Anger, fear, finally, resignation. Fine. You want me gone. I'm gone. But don't pretend you're victims. You're just wolves who got outplayed. She walked out. The door slammed. Silence filled the office like water. Heavy. Suffocating. Damien sank into a chair, put his head in his hands. I'm an idiot. Yes. Kael's voice held no sympathy. You chose power over substance, ambition over loyalty, and you got exactly what you deserved. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you still don't understand the real mistake. What mistake? You threw away Everly, the one wolf who would have died before betraying you, the one who actually cared about your pack, not your status, and you replaced her with a con artist. Damien looked up. Tears streaked his ash-covered face. I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Good. Kael turned to leave, because regret's the only thing you've earned. Wait. Damien stood. The pack. The funds she stole. I can't recover from this. The council will call for my removal. I'll lose everything. Should have thought about that before you let a thief mark you. Please. Damien's voice cracked. I'm asking for help, not for me, for them. The pack. They didn't choose this. Kael stopped, looked at Everly. Your call. Everyone turned to her. Everly felt the weight of their stares. 3 days ago, she'd walked back into this territory broken and rejected. Now Damien was asking her to save him. The irony wasn't lost on her. She moved to the window, looked out at the compound. Wolves moved through the aftermath of the fire, cleaning, rebuilding, surviving. They weren't Damien's pack. They were just wolves trying to live through someone else's mistakes. I'll help, she said quietly. But not for you. Damien exhaled. Thank you. I'm not finished. Everly turned. I'll help rebuild. Stabilize finances. Mediate with the council. But you stepped down. What? You heard me. You're not fit to lead. Not anymore. Maybe you never were. So you abdicate. Temporarily. Until the pack's secure. Then we'll see if you've earned the right to lead again. I can't just... You can. And you will. Because the alternative is watching everything collapse while you desperately cling to a title you've proven you don't deserve. Damien looked like she'd gutted him, but he nodded. Okay. I'll step down. Good. Everly's voice was steel. I'll take interim authority, with Kael's backing. And the first thing I'm doing is a complete financial audit. Every account, every transaction. If there are more snakes hiding in your ledgers, I'm burning them out. Understood. The next week was brutal. Everly worked 18-hour days. She met with every council member individually, reviewed every financial record Serafina hadn't destroyed, tracked down offshore accounts, and began the process of reclaiming stolen funds. Cale stayed. His presence alone kept potential challengers at bay, but he let Everly lead, didn't interfere, didn't undermine, just stood behind her like a wall of absolute authority. The pack responded, slowly, cautiously, but they responded. Wolves who'd been preparing to leave reconsidered. Council members who'd planned coups stood down, not because they suddenly loved Damien, because they respected strength, and Everly was proving she had it. Marcus visited one evening, found her in the council room surrounded by ledgers. "You look like hell," he observed. "I feel like hell." He sat across from her. "Can I give you some advice? If it's useful. Don't burn yourself out for wolves who wouldn't do the same for you. I'm not doing it for them." Everly set down her quill. "I'm doing it because if I don't, I'll always wonder if I could have made a difference. And I'm done living with what-ifs." "Fair enough." Marcus leaned back. "For what it's worth, you've impressed the council. Half of them think you should take over permanently. That's not why I'm here. Maybe it should be. You're better at this than Damien ever was. That's not saying much." "No. But it's still true." He left. Everly returned to the ledgers. Numbers blurred, her eyes burned. She was exhausted down to her bones. A knock sounded. Cale entered without waiting for permission. "You need to rest," he said. "I need to finish this." "You need to rest. The ledgers will be here tomorrow. So will the problems." "Everly." His voice was gentle. "You're running yourself into the ground for a pack that isn't even yours anymore." "I know." "Then why?" She set down the quill, looked at him. "Because I need to prove something. To who? Myself. That I'm not the broken girl who ran through the forest. That I can stand in the place that destroyed me and not crumble. That I'm more than Damien's rejection. You've already proven all of that." "Have I?" "Because it still feels like I'm one mistake away from falling apart." Cale moved around his desk, crouched beside her chair, so his face was level with hers. "You saved a burning village, walked into hostile territory with your head high, rebuilt a pack that wasn't yours. If that's not strength, I don't know what is. Then why do I still feel weak? Because you're human, and being human means carrying wounds even after they've healed. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you real." Tears burned Everly's eyes. She blinked them back. "I'm tired, Cale, I know. I'm so tired of fighting, of proving myself, of being strong." "Then don't. Not tonight." He stood, offered his hand. "Come on." "Where?" "Away from this room, away from these ledgers, just away." She took his hand, let him pull her up. They walked through quiet corridors to the balcony overlooking the mountains. Stars filled the sky, endless and cold and beautiful. Kyle stood beside her, didn't speak, just existed in the same space. It was enough. After a long silence, Everly spoke. "Garrett thinks you're getting too attached. Garrett worries too much. Is he wrong?" Cale was quiet for a moment. Then, "No, he's not wrong." Her breath caught. "Cale, I've spent 10 years building walls, keeping everyone at a distance, because caring about people makes you vulnerable, makes you weak." He turned to face her. "Then you stumbled into my forest, and every wall I built started cracking. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you ran into a burning building for a stranger. I know you walked back into the place that destroyed you to save wolves who didn't deserve it. I know you're standing here exhausted and broken and still refusing to quit." His hand came up, cupped her face. "And I know when I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for." Everly's chest tightened. "I can't be what you need. You already are. I'm damaged. I'm human. You're human, and that's exactly what I need." The space between them felt charged, electric. Everly could feel his breath, could see the way his eyes had darkened, could sense the wolf beneath his skin straining toward her. She should step back, create distance, protect herself from another potential heartbreak. Instead, she leaned forward. The kiss was inevitable, like gravity, like breathing. His lips met hers and something in Everly's chest cracked open, not breaking, blooming. Kyle kissed like he did everything else. Thoroughly, completely, with absolute focus. His hand slid into her hair, his other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. Everly melted into it. Let herself feel without analyzing. Let herself want without questioning. For the first time in months, she wasn't the rejected mate or the interim leader or the broken girl. She was just herself, and that was enough. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cale rested his forehead against hers. That was unexpected, Everly whispered. Amazing. That too. They stood wrapped in each other. The world narrowed to just them. Just this moment. Then footsteps pounded up the stairs. Garrett appeared, face grim. Alpha King. We have a problem. Cale didn't move away from Everly. What kind of problem? The kind with teeth. Seraphina's back, and she brought friends. They descended to the main hall. Through the windows, Everly could see torches, dozens of them, surrounding the compound. How many? Cale demanded. 80, maybe more. Garrett's jaw was tight. Rogues. Well-armed. Well-organized. Seraphina. She's at the front. Making demands. What demands? She wants Damien. Says if we hand him over, she'll leave peacefully. If we don't, she'll burn this place to the ground. Cale's expression went cold. Like hell. They moved to the entrance. Damien was already there, staring out at the siege. His face was pale but determined. This is my fault, he said quietly. I'll go. No. Everly stepped beside him. You step out there. You're dead. Better me than the whole pack. That's not how this works. She turned to Cale. Can your wolves hold against 80 rogues? For a while. But not indefinitely. We're outnumbered 4-1. Then we need a different strategy. Everly. Damien grabbed her arm. She's here for me. Let me end this. And give her exactly what she wants. No. Everly pulled free. She's not here for justice. She's here for revenge and money. If we hand you over, she'll kill you and still burn this place down. Because that's who she is. So what do? We negotiate. With a psychopath. With someone who wants something. Everyone wants something. We just have to figure out what. Everly walked to the door. Kyle moved to stop her. She shook her head. I'm not going out there. I'm just talking. She opened the door. Stood in the entrance. Visible, but protected. Seraphina stood at the front of the rogue pack. She looked different. Harder. Hair pulled back. Leather armor. A sword at her hip. Everly Hart, Seraphina called. Come to beg for mercy. Come to offer a deal. I'm not interested in deals. Everyone's interested in deals. You just haven't heard the right one yet. Seraphina laughed. This should be good. You want Damien. Everly kept her voice steady. I get it. He rejected you just like he rejected me. That kind of humiliation cuts deep. This isn't about humiliation. It's about what I'm owed. What are you owed? The money you stole. The pack you tried to destroy. I earned that money. By embezzling it. By doing the work Damien was too weak to do. Seraphina's eyes blazed. I built alliances, secured resources, made the hard choices. And when it all fell apart, I made sure I'd survive. That's not theft. That's intelligence. Then why do you need Damien? You've got the money. You've got 80 rogues. You could disappear, start over. Instead, you're here risking everything for revenge. Because he humiliated me. Seraphina spat the words. He threw me out like garbage. In front of you. In front of the Alpha King. He made me look weak. So this is about pride. This is about respect. And I'm going to get it by burning his world to ash. Everly saw it then. The real weakness. Seraphina didn't want money. She wanted validation. Wanted to prove she'd won. What if I could give you something better than revenge? Everly said. There's nothing better than revenge. Freedom. Real freedom. No pack. No debts. No one hunting you. I already have that. No. You have 80 rogues you promised something to. Probably money. Maybe territory. But the second you can't deliver, they'll turn on you. Because rogues are loyal to one thing. Themselves. Seraphina's expression flickered. Everly had hit a nerve. You're trapped, Everly continued. Just like Damien was trapped by his pride. Just like I was trapped by my rejection. We're all trapped by something. The question is, do you want to stay trapped or do you want out? What are you offering? Safe passage. The funds you stole. No pursuit. You disappear. We never come after you, and you get to live knowing you outplayed everyone. And Damien walks free, learns from his mistakes, maybe becomes a better alpha, or maybe he fails. Either way, it's not your problem anymore. Serafina stared at her, calculating, considering. Why would you let me go? She asked finally. Because killing you solves nothing. It just creates more violence, more blood, more wolves who think the only way to survive is by destroying others. Everly stepped forward. I'm tired of that world. I want to build a different one. But I can't do that if we're all busy burning each other down. The rogues behind Serafina shifted, restless. Everly could feel their uncertainty. They'd signed up for a quick raid, easy money, not a philosophical debate. Serafina felt it too. Her authority was slipping. Fine, she said finally. I'll take your deal. But I want double the original amount. And transport across the border. Done. Just like that. Just like that. Everly met her eyes. But if you ever come back, if you ever threaten this pack or any wolf under my protection again, I won't negotiate. I'll let the Alpha King do what he does best. And what's that? End threats. Permanently. Serafina smiled. It wasn't kind. You've gotten harder, Everly Hart. I've gotten realistic. The rogues dispersed within the hour. Serafina left with her money and her life. The siege ended without a single casualty. Damien stood in the main hall looking shell-shocked. You just saved me. Again. I saved the pack. You're just a bonus. Why? After everything I did, why would you? Because someone has to break the cycle. Everly's voice was tired. Someone has to choose mercy over revenge, rebuilding over destruction, and apparently that someone is me. I don't deserve this. No, you don't, but they do. She gestured to the wolves gathering, the pack members who'd been preparing for war. They deserve a chance to survive without being collateral damage in someone else's grudge match. Thank you. Damien's voice broke. I know it doesn't fix anything, but thank you. Everly nodded, then walked away. She was done with Damien, done with Silvercrest, done with this chapter of her life. Kael waited outside. How do you feel? Empty. She leaned against him, like I just gave away the last piece of anger I had. And now I don't know what I'm left with. Yourself. That's what you're left with. Is that enough? It's everything. They returned to the guest quarters, packed their things. By dawn, the convoy was ready to leave. Damien came to see them off. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. I meant what I said, he told Everly, about stepping down. The council's meeting next week to discuss permanent leadership. Good. Find someone who actually cares about the pack, not the title. And if they ask you, tell them I'm not interested. I've got somewhere else to be. She mounted her horse, rode out of Silvercrest territory without looking back. Kael rode beside her. His wolves flanked them, protection and partnership. The northern fortress appeared by evening. Home. The word settled into Everly's chest, unexpected, but true. Lyra greeted them at the gates. How was it? Complicated. Everly dismounted, but finished. Good. Because the council's been asking when you're back. They have proposals that need your input. My input. Why would they? Because you're an advisor now. Lyra grinned. Didn't Kael tell you? The council voted while you were gone. Unanimous. You have a permanent seat. Everly looked at Kael. He shrugged. You earned it. You could have asked me first. I could have. But I knew you'd argue. So I made an executive decision. That's not how this works. Sure it is. I'm the king. I decide how things work. She wanted to be angry, but couldn't manage it. Instead, she laughed. First time in weeks, it felt good. They walked into the fortress together. Wolves bowed as they passed. Not to Kael, to both of them. Equal respect, equal authority. That night, Everly stood in her room staring at the northern lights. Kael knocked, entered without waiting for permission. We need to talk, he said. About what? About what happens next. He moved to stand beside her. You've spent weeks rebuilding someone else's pack, fixing someone else's mistakes. What do you want, Everly? I don't know. Yes, you do. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to stop running. I want to stop proving myself. I want to just exist without constantly worrying I'm one mistake away from being thrown away again. You're not going to be thrown away. How do you know? Because I'm not Damien. Cale turned her to face him. When I claim something, I keep it. No conditions, no qualifications, just absolute commitment. You keep saying claim, like I'm territory. Aren't you? His eyes held hers, not in a possessive way, in a this is my ground and I defend it way. You're not an object, you're a person, but you're also mine. If you'll have me, Everly's breath caught. That's a big if. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you've already made your choice. You just haven't said it out loud yet. He was right. Somewhere between the forest and the fire and the siege, she'd chosen him, chosen this, chosen a future that didn't involve looking back. Okay, she whispered. Okay, what? Okay, I'm yours. If you're mine. Deal. He kissed her. Deeper this time. Claiming, promising. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Kyle pressed his forehead to hers. No more running, no more running. But even as she said it, something cold settled in Everly's stomach. A premonition. A sense that the worst wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because in the shadows beyond the fortress walls, someone watched. Someone who'd been watching for weeks. Someone who'd waited patiently for the right moment to strike. And that moment was coming. Marcus entered Kyle's private study 3 nights later. His face was grim. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that ends kingdoms." Marcus dropped a sealed letter on the desk. "This arrived an hour ago. From the Southern Coalition." "What Southern Coalition?" "Exactly." Marcus's jaw was tight. 6 packs. Allied. They're claiming you've overstepped your authority, interfered in internal pack affairs, and they're demanding you stand trial before the Council of Alphas. For what? For acts of war. Apparently your involvement in Silvercrest counts as territorial aggression. That's insane. I was invited. Doesn't matter. They've twisted the narrative, made it look like you invaded under the guise of diplomacy. Who's leading this? Marcus hesitated. Then, Damien Blackwood. The world stopped. Everly, who'd been listening from the doorway, felt ice flood her veins. "That's not possible," she whispered. "We saved him. We saved his entire pack. And now he's using that to destroy you." Marcus turned to her. "I'm sorry, Everly, but your former mate just declared war on the Obsidian Crown." Cale's expression had gone cold, colder than she'd ever seen, the kind of cold that preceded violence. "He played us," Cale said quietly. "Let us fix his mess. Let us save his people. Built goodwill, then use that goodwill to turn other packs against us." "Why?" Everly couldn't understand. Why would he? "Because you chose me." Cale met her eyes. "And he can't stand it. So if he can't have you, he'll destroy everything you've built." "That's insane. That's an alpha scorned." The trial was set for the next full moon. 2 weeks. If Kyle didn't appear, the coalition would consider it an admission of guilt. And they'd march north. War. Real war. Not skirmishes or raids, full-scale conflict that would devastate the entire region, all because Damien Blackwood couldn't let go. Everly stood on the ramparts that night, staring south, toward Silvercrest, toward the pack she'd tried to save, toward the man who was going to destroy everything she'd fought for. Cale found her there, silent, just stood beside her. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "For what? For bringing this to your door? For being the reason?" "Stop." His voice was firm. "This isn't your fault. It's his, and he's going to regret it." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm going to make certain of it." Cale's eyes met hers. "I told you I protect what's mine, and you're mine now, which means Damien Blackwood just made the last mistake of his life." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they terrified her. Because Everly understood what Kyle was saying. This wasn't going to end in a trial. This was going to end in blood. And she'd have to choose. Stand beside the man who'd saved her and watch him become a monster, or try to stop him and lose everything she'd built. Either way, the girl who'd run through the forest broken and alone was gone. The woman who stood in her place was harder, colder, forged by betrayal and fire and impossible choices, and she had no idea who she'd become by the time this was over, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Someone wasn't walking away from this alive, and Everly Hart was done being the victim. The war drums started 3 days before the full moon. Not literal drums, but the sound carried the same weight. Messengers arriving every hour, reports of the Southern Coalition mobilizing, 6 packs, 3,000 wolves, all marching north under a banner that claimed justice but reeked of jealousy and wounded pride. Everly stood in the strategy room watching Kael's commanders argue. Garrett wanted to fortify the fortress and wait them out. Marcus advocated for a preemptive strike. Another commander suggested diplomatic channels. All of them talked around the truth nobody wanted to say out loud. They were outnumbered 3-1. And Damien had spent weeks building alliances while they'd been trying to save his miserable pack. Kael listened to every argument. His face was stone. When the room finally fell silent, he spoke. "We go to the trial." Garrett's head snapped up. "That's suicide. That's strategy." Kael's eyes were cold. "They want me to appear before the Council of Alphas." "Fine. I'll appear. But not as a defendant. As a king. They'll have 3,000 wolves, and I'll have the truth." Kael stood. "Every word out of my mouth will be documented. Witnessed. When Damien accuses me of territorial aggression, I'll present the evidence of his mate's arson, her theft, his request for help. He'll deny it. Of course he will. But the other alphas aren't stupid. They know a wounded wolf when they see one. And right now, Damien's bleeding desperation." "What if that's not enough?" Everly asked quietly. "What if they side with him anyway? Then we fight." Kael met her eyes. "But at least we'll have tried peace first, which means when blood gets spilled, history will remember who started it." The logic was sound, cold, calculated. Exactly what Everly would expect from a king who'd spent 10 years building an empire through intelligence, not just violence. But underneath the strategy, she could feel something else, something darker. Kael wasn't going to that trial hoping for peace. He was going to make Damien pay. And if that payment came in blood, so be it. She found him later on the ramparts, alone, staring south like he could see through the mountains to where Damien was gathering his forces. "You're planning something," she said. "Always. Want to share?" "Not particularly." Everly moved to stand beside him. The wind cut through her cloak. Winter was coming early this year. She could smell snow in the air. Blood, too. Maybe that was just imagination. Or maybe violence had a scent that preceded it. "If this goes bad," she said quietly, "I need you to promise me something. I don't make promises I can't keep. Promise me you won't burn the world down just because I asked you not to let Damien destroy me." Kael was silent for a long moment. Then, "I can't promise that." "Kael." He turned to face her. His gray eyes burned. "You don't understand what you are to me. You're not just some wolf I decided to help. You're not even just someone I care about. You're the first person in 10 years who made me remember what it feels like to want something beyond power and territory and control. That's too much pressure. That's the truth." His hand came up, cupped her face. "And if Damien thinks he can take you away, if he thinks he can use some fabricated trial to destroy what we're building, then yes, I will burn the world down. Because that's what wolves like me do when someone threatens what's ours. I don't want to be the reason you become a monster. Too late. I've always been a monster. You just made me want to be a better one." The words should have terrified her. Instead, they settled into her chest like armor. Because in a world where power was the only currency that mattered, Kael was offering her something nobody else ever had. Not protection, not possession, partnership. The kind where, when one of them fell, the other would raise everything in their path to set things right. Damien had never offered that. He'd offered conditional love, affection with strings attached, support that evaporated the moment she stopped being useful. Kael offered absolute commitment, and if that came with darkness, well. Everly was done pretending she was made entirely of light. The convoy left at dawn. 50 wolves. Kael at the front, Everly beside him, every warrior handpicked, every weapon sharpened. They rode south not as supplicants, but as a force, the kind that made smart people step aside. The trial was being held at the Grand Moon Summit. neutral territory. A massive amphitheater carved into a mountainside where every alpha gathering had been held for centuries. By the time they arrived, thousands of wolves already filled the space. The Southern Coalition occupied the eastern side. Other packs, neutral observers, scattered throughout. And at the center, on a raised platform, sat the Council of Alphas, 7 of the oldest, most powerful alphas in the region. The ones who supposedly kept order when territories clashed. Everly had never seen anything like it. The sheer density of power in one place made her skin prickle. Every wolf here was dominant. Every gaze carried weight. This wasn't a pack meeting. This was an empire convened. And somewhere in this sea of fangs and politics, Damien was waiting to destroy the man who'd saved him. Kale dismounted, offered his hand to Everly. She took it. They walked through the crowd together. Wolves parted, some out of respect, others out of fear. The distinction didn't matter. The result was the same. Damien stood on the platform. He looked different, harder. His jaw was set, his eyes cold. Seraphina's influence might be gone, but her lessons had taken root. He'd learned to weaponize his pain, turn his humiliation into fuel. Beside him stood the other coalition leaders, alphas from packs Everly had never heard of, united by Damien's rhetoric, by promises that Kael had overstepped, that the northern territories were growing too powerful, that someone needed to remind the Alpha King he wasn't above pack law. The eldest alpha on the council, a gray-haired female named Morrigan, raised her hand. Silence fell like a guillotine. We are gathered to hear testimony regarding accusations of territorial aggression levied against Alpha King Kael Draven of the Obsidian Crown. Damien Blackwood of Silvercrest, you may present your case. Damien stepped forward, his voice carried across the amphitheater. Clear, strong, convincing. 3 weeks ago, Alpha King Draven entered my territory under the guise of diplomatic assistance. He claimed to be helping stabilize internal conflicts, but his true purpose was infiltration. He placed his own advisor, he gestured to Everly, in a position of authority over my pack. He undermined my council. He manipulated financial records to make my mate look guilty of crimes she didn't commit. And when she defended herself, he drove her from our lands and threatened war if I resisted. The crowd murmured. Everly felt rage build in her chest. Every word was a lie, twisted just enough to sound plausible. Furthermore, Damien continued, he has used this precedent to justify interference in other packs. The Northern Territories have expanded by 12% in the last year alone, always under the excuse of assistance, always leaving Alpha King Draven's wolves in positions of influence. This isn't diplomacy, it's conquest, and if we don't stop it now, none of our packs will be safe. The murmurs grew louder. Everly could feel the room turning. Damien had done his homework, planted seeds of doubt, used truth as a framework to support lies. Morgan turned to Kael. Alpha King Draven, your response. Kael stepped onto the platform. He didn't rush, didn't posture, just moved with the absolute confidence of someone who knew his own power and didn't need to prove it. Alpha Blackwood has an impressive imagination, Kael said. His tone was almost conversational. Pity he didn't use it to run his pack better. That's not an answer, one of the council members snapped. No, it's an observation. Kael turned to face the crowd. Everything Damien just described is accurate in the narrowest sense. I did enter his territory. I did place Everly in a position of authority. I did expose his mate's crimes. What he conveniently left out is context, such as the fact that he invited me. Kael produced a sealed letter, handed it to Morrigan. This is a formal request for assistance signed by Alpha Blackwood himself, dated 2 days before I arrived. In it, he admits his pack is collapsing, that his mate is consolidating power against his will, that he fears a coup. Damien's face paled. That's a lie. Kael's voice cut like a blade. Finish that sentence and I'll have 3 witnesses testify otherwise. You can't prove... I don't have to prove anything. You already did. Kael gestured to the crowd. Everyone here knows what a desperate alpha looks like. You're hemorrhaging support. Your pack's on the verge of fracture. So you manufactured an external threat, made me the villain to unify your people. That's not... It's exactly what you did, and it might have worked, except you made one critical mistake. What mistake? You lied about Everly. The amphitheater went silent. Kael descended from the platform, walked toward Damien, stopped 3 feet away. The air between them crackled with violence, barely restrained. "You publicly rejected this wolf," Kael said quietly. "Called her weak, fragile. Told your entire pack she wasn't fit to stand beside an alpha. Then she disappeared. And you moved on. Chose another woman. Built a future that didn't include her." Damien's jaw clenched. "What's your point?" "My point is you don't get to weaponize her now. You don't get to drag her into your political theater and paint her as some kind of pawn, because Everly Hart has done more for your pack in 3 weeks than you accomplished in 5 years. The crowd erupted. Voices overlapped, some agreeing, others protesting. Morgan slammed her staff against the platform. Silence. She waited until the amphitheater quieted. "Alpha Draven, are you suggesting Alpha Blackwood fabricated these accusations out of jealousy? I'm suggesting he's a wounded wolf lashing out at the first target he can reach, and he's using pack law to legitimize revenge." "Prove it," Damien snarled. "Gladly." Kael turned to the council. "Subpoena my financial records. Send neutral auditors to examine the Northern Territory's expansion. You'll find every land acquisition was either purchased legally or earned through challenge combat. You'll find no coercion, no manipulation, just wolves choosing to align with a kingdom that protects them." "And my pack's records," Damien demanded. "What about the evidence you claim proves my mate's guilt? Already submitted to the council." Garrett stepped forward with a sealed case. Inside were copies of the ledgers, documentation of offshore accounts, testimony from witnesses who'd seen Serafina dismiss guards before the fire. Morgan opened the case, reviewed the contents. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened. "This is substantial," she said finally. "It's fabricated," Damien insisted. "Then prove it." Kael's voice was steel. "Bring your mate here. Let her testify under oath. Let the council question her. She's not here." "How convenient. She left after the fire. I don't know where she is, because you drove her out, just like you tried to drive out everyone who made you look weak by comparison." Damien's control snapped. His hand shot out, grabbing Kael's collar. "You don't know anything about my pack. I know you rejected the best thing you ever had because she reminded you of your own inadequacy." Kael didn't resist the grab, didn't pull away, just stared Damien down with those cold gray eyes. "And now you're watching her thrive beside me. And it's killing you." Damien shoved him back. Warriors from both sides tensed, hands moved to weapons. The entire amphitheater balanced on a knife's edge. Morgan's voice cut through the tension. "Enough. Both alphas will stand down. Now." Kael straightened his collar, stepped back. Damien remained rigid, fists clenched, breathing hard. "The council will deliberate," Morgan announced. "We reconvene at dusk." The crowd dispersed, slowly, reluctantly. Everly followed Kael out of the amphitheater. Her heart hammered. That had been seconds away from becoming a bloodbath. Garrett caught up to them. "That went better than expected." "Did it?" Kael's jaw was tight. He believes his own lies now. That makes him dangerous. What happens if the council sides with him? They won't. But if they do, then we fight our way out of here and let the coalition come north. We'll bleed them at the borders until they remember why challenging the Obsidian Crown is a death sentence. Everly's stomach churned. Thousands would die. All because Damien couldn't accept that she'd moved on. They retreated to the northern camp, tents erected on the western ridge, guards posted, everyone on edge. Everly sat outside her tent watching the sun descend toward the horizon. Every minute that passed felt like a countdown. Kael found her there, sat beside her without speaking. Sometimes his presence said more than words ever could. "I'm sorry," Everly whispered. "For what?" "For being the catalyst. If you'd never met me, then I'd still be a king, but I wouldn't be a man." She looked at him. "What does that mean?" "It means power's easy, ruling's easy. You make decisions and people follow because the alternative is worse. But caring about someone, actually caring, that's hard. Because suddenly you have something to lose, and loss makes you vulnerable." He paused. "You made me vulnerable, Everly, and I wouldn't trade that for anything, even if it cost you your kingdom. Especially then, because kingdoms can be rebuilt, but finding someone who makes you want to be more than what you are, that's rare." The words settled into her bones. Heavy, precious, terrifying. The horn sounded at dusk. 3 long blasts. The council was ready. They returned to the amphitheater. The crowd had swollen. Word had spread. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was theater, entertainment, wolves betting on outcomes, predicting violence. Morgan stood. The council has reviewed all evidence and testimony. We have reached a decision. The amphitheater fell silent. Everly could hear her own heartbeat, could feel Kael's tension radiating beside her. The accusations of territorial aggression are unsubstantiated. Morgan's voice carried. Alpha King Draven acted within his rights when he responded to a formal request for assistance. The evidence of financial crimes committed by Luna Seraphina Vale is compelling and warrants further investigation. However, Everly's breath caught on that word. However, the council finds that Alpha Draven's methods were unnecessarily provocative. Placing his own advisor in a position of authority over another Alpha's pack, regardless of circumstance, sets a dangerous precedent. Therefore, we rule as follows. Alpha Draven will publicly apologize for overstepping pack protocol. He will pay reparations to Silvercrest for damages incurred. And he will agree to a non-interference treaty regarding all coalition territories for a period of 5 years. Kael's expression didn't change, but Everly felt his rage. Contained, controlled, lethal. These terms are acceptable, Morgan continued, or the council will authorize the coalition to enforce compliance through whatever means necessary. The threat was clear. Apologize and pay, or face war. Kael stepped onto the platform, every eye in the amphitheater fixed on him, waiting, watching. No, he said simply. The word dropped like a stone into still water. Ripples spread. Confusion, shock, disbelief. Morgan's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. I said no. Kael's voice was calm, absolute. I will not apologize for helping wolves in need. I will not pay reparations for crimes I didn't commit. And I will not sign a treaty that restricts my ability to respond when packs under my protection call for help. Then you refuse the council's ruling. I refuse unjust terms designed to appease a wounded alpha's pride. The amphitheater erupted. Wolves shouted. Warriors drew weapons. The coalition leaders screamed for Kael's arrest. Morgan slammed her staff repeatedly until silence returned. Alpha Draven, she said coldly, you understand what you're doing. Perfectly. You're choosing war over peace. I'm choosing principle over politics. There's a difference. Principles don't stop armies. No, but they're worth dying for. Everly's heart seized. She pushed through the crowd toward the platform. Kael, don't do this. He looked at her. His eyes were sad, resigned. I have to. Why? For pride. For you. His voice was quiet enough that only she could hear. Because if I apologize, I'm admitting you were a pawn, that helping you was a mistake. And I will not let anyone, not this council, not Damien, not the entire Southern Coalition, make you feel worthless again. The weight of his words crushed her chest. He was choosing war, choosing death, choosing the destruction of everything he'd built, because admitting fault meant diminishing her, and he wouldn't do it. This is insane, she whispered. This is love. The word hung between them. Love, raw, unvarnished, the kind that didn't calculate costs or measure consequences, the kind that looked at impossible odds and said, not today. Everly had spent her entire life making herself smaller so others could feel bigger, accepting less so they could have more. She'd convinced herself that's what strength looked like. Endurance without complaint, survival without resistance. But standing on this platform, watching Kael refuse to diminish her, even if it meant his death, she finally understood. Real strength wasn't enduring pain, it was refusing to accept it. It was looking at the world's cruelty and saying, I deserve better, we deserve better. And if that meant burning everything down to prove it, then so be it. She turned to face the council. He's right, her voice carried, clear, strong. The crowd quieted. He's right, she repeated. This trial isn't about territorial aggression. It's about jealousy and wounded pride and an alpha who can't accept that the woman he threw away became someone extraordinary without him. And if upholding principle means war, then let there be war. Because I'm done letting men who couldn't see my worth dictate the terms of my existence. Damien's face went white. Everly, My name in your mouth is a privilege you lost. She descended from the platform, walked toward him. Every step measured, deliberate. When she stopped, they stood eye to eye. You had 5 years to see me, to value me, to treat me like I mattered. And you spent every single one of those years making me feel small so you could feel big. Well, congratulations. You succeeded. You broke me so thoroughly I believed I deserved it. I never meant... You meant every word, every dismissal. Every time you chose someone else or something else over me, you meant it. So own it. Stop hiding behind treaties and politics and fabricated accusations. Admit what this really is. You can't stand watching me thrive beside a man who sees what you were too blind to notice. Damien's throat worked. I made a mistake. Yes, you did. And now you're compounding it by trying to drag everyone else into your misery. She turned back to the council. I stand with Alpha King Draven. If his refusal to apologize means war, then I will fight beside him. And so will every wolf who believes that protecting the vulnerable isn't overstepping. It's basic decency. The amphitheater was deathly silent. Then one wolf stood, a female from the neutral observers. She walked to the northern side, stood beside Everly, then another, and another. Wolves from different packs, different territories, united not by politics but by principle, by the belief that power should protect, not dominate. Within minutes, a quarter of the crowd had defected. The coalition's support bled away before Damien's eyes. Morgan watched it all with an unreadable expression. Then she raised her hand. The council withdraws its ruling. This matter will be tabled pending further investigation. The relief should have been immediate. Instead, Everly felt nothing, because she knew this wasn't over. Damien's expression had gone beyond anger into something colder, more calculated. He'd lost the trial, lost support, lost credibility, which meant he had nothing left to lose. And wolves with nothing to lose were the most dangerous kind. The crowd dispersed. Slowly. Tensions remained high. Kael's forces regrouped at their camp. Everly stood at the perimeter watching the Southern Coalition pack up. Damien's tent was still lit. Shadows moved inside. Planning, scheming. Garrett appeared beside her. He's not done. I know. We should leave, tonight, before he does something stupid. He's going to come after us regardless. Leaving just changes the battlefield. At least it'd be our battlefield. Here, we're outnumbered and exposed. Everly nodded slowly. You're right. Tell Kael... Screams erupted from the southern camp. Fire burst from 3 different tents simultaneously. Warriors scrambled. Chaos spread like disease. It's a distraction, Garrett shouted. He grabbed Everly's arm. We need to move, now! They ran toward Kael's tent, found it empty. Everly's blood ran cold. Where is he? A wolf stumbled toward them. Blood poured from a wound in his side. Alpha King. They took him. Ambush. Who took him? Blackwood. He had 30 wolves. They grabbed the king during the chaos, dragged him toward the cliffs. Everly didn't think. She ran. Garrett shouted after her, but she didn't stop. Her wolf surged forward, lending her speed. She crashed through underbrush toward the cliff line, heard voices ahead, violent, angry. She burst into a clearing. Kael knelt in the center, surrounded by Damien's wolves. His hands were bound. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye. Damien stood over him, a knife pressed to Kael's throat. Everly, Damien said calmly. Perfect timing. Let him go. Or what? You'll fight me. You're not a warrior, Everly. You never were. Maybe not, but I'm done running. She stepped forward. Damien's wolves moved to block her. She stopped, studied the situation. 30 against 1. Kael injured, bound, helpless. Every strategic calculation said this was unwinnable, but strategy assumed you had something to protect. Everly had already lost everything once. Death wasn't frightening anymore. It was just another option. What do you want? She asked. Damien's smile was cold. I want you to watch him die. I want you to understand what you cost me. And then I want you to live with it. The same way I've had to live with watching you choose him. So this is revenge. This is justice. Justice would be accepting responsibility for your own failures. This is just sad. Damien's hand tightened on the knife. You think I won't do it. I think you're too much of a coward to do it yourself. That's why you brought 30 wolves, because deep down, you know Kael's better than you. Stronger, smarter, and if you faced him alone, you'd lose. The words hit their mark. Damien's eyes flashed. Prove it. Cut him loose. Face him one-on-one. If you win, I'll never speak to him again. I'll disappear. You can claim victory. And if he wins, then you accept that you lost me because of who you are, not who he is. Damien stared at her, calculating, considering. Finally, he nodded. Fine. Cut him loose. His wolves hesitated. Alpha, this is... Do it! They cut Kael's bonds. He stood slowly. Blood still dripped from his temple, but his eyes were clear, focused. He looked at Everly, nodded once. Trust. Promise. Commitment. Damien circled. The knife gleamed in moonlight. You really think you're better than me? I don't think. I know. Prove it. They collided. Fast. Brutal. Damien had desperation driving him. Kael had cold precision. The knife flashed. Kael dodged, grabbed Damien's wrist, twisted, bone cracked. Damien screamed. The knife fell. Kael swept Damien's legs. He hit the ground hard. Kael's knee pressed against his chest. His hand wrapped around Damien's throat. Yield, Kael said quietly. Damien's face turned purple. His wolves moved forward. Kael squeezed harder. I said yield, never. Then die. Wait! Everly's voice cut through the clearing. Don't kill him! Kael's eyes met hers. Why not? Because he's not worth it, and because I don't want his death on our conscience. She stepped closer. Let him go, Kael. We've already won. He destroyed everything. He tried to kill me, and he failed. So let him live with that failure. Let him watch us build something beautiful while he drowns in his own bitterness. Kael held Damien's throat for one more endless second, then released him, stood. Damien gasped for air. If you ever come near her again, Kael said quietly, I won't be merciful. He turned, took Everly's hand. They walked out of that clearing together. Damien's wolves parted. No one tried to stop them. Behind them, Damien coughed, struggled to his knees. Everly heard him call her name one last time. She didn't look back. They returned to camp. Garrett had assembled their forces, ready to move. Kael gave orders to break camp immediately. Within the hour, they were riding north. The fortress appeared at dawn. Home, safe, whole. But as they dismounted, a messenger ran toward them, face white, terrified. Alpha King. We have a problem. What now? The Southern Coalition. They're not accepting the Council's ruling. They've declared the Obsidian Crown an enemy state. And they're marching north, all 6 packs, 4,000 wolves. They'll be at our borders in 3 days. Kael's expression went cold. Then we prepare. For what? War. The fortress erupted into controlled chaos. Warriors armed, defenses reinforced, alliances called. Every wolf who owed Kael moved toward the northern territories. Everly stood on the ramparts watching preparations. 4,000 wolves, against maybe 1,500. The math was brutal. Kael joined her. We can't win this. I know, so why are you smiling? Because for the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, fighting for something that matters, beside someone who values me. And if we die defending that, at least we die as ourselves. We're not going to die. How can you be sure? Because I'm not done with you yet. He pulled her close. And I don't leave things unfinished. The 3 days passed in a blur. Scouts reported the coalition's progress. 50 miles. 30. 20. They were coming fast. Confident. Expecting easy victory. They had no idea what waited for them. On the 3rd night, Kael assembled every wolf in the fortress. Hundreds packed into the great hall. He stood on the platform where he'd first offered Everly a place, where everything had begun. Tomorrow, we face an army that wants to destroy everything we've built, he said. His voice carried. Clear, strong. They think we're weak because we chose principle over politics, because we protected the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. They think mercy is weakness. Compassion is failure. He paused. Let them come. Let them test that theory. And when we stand over their broken forces, let them remember this day. The day they learned that the obsidian crown doesn't conquer, it protects. And there is no force more dangerous than wolves protecting what they love. The hall erupted. Cheers, howls, battle cries. Everly stood beside him, looked out at these wolves who'd chosen to fight impossible odds, and understood what Kyle had built. Not an empire, a family. That night she couldn't sleep. She stood on her balcony watching the southern horizon. Fires burned in the distance, the coalition making camp, preparing for dawn. Kyle found her there. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. I know, you don't have to fight. You could stay here, safe, and watch you die. No. Everly, I'm done being protected. I'm done being the fragile thing everyone has to shield. Tomorrow, I fight. Beside you, you're not a warrior. No. I'm something better. I'm someone who refuses to quit. He kissed her then, deep, desperate, like he was trying to memorize her. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. If we survive this, he whispered, I'm never letting you go. If we survive this, I'm never leaving. Dawn broke red. Blood sky. Warriors assembled on the fortress walls. 1,500 against 4,000. The coalition spread across the valley like a dark sea. At the front, Damien sat on his horse. Beside him, the other coalition leaders, all of them staring at the fortress. At Kyle standing on the battlements, at Everly beside him. This was it. The moment everything had been building toward. No more trials, no more politics, just violence and survival and the brutal simplicity of wolves at war. Kale raised his hand. Every warrior readied their weapon. The coalition charged. And Everly Hart, the wolf everyone called too weak to stand beside an alpha, drew her blade and prepared to prove them all catastrophically wrong. The first wave hit like thunder. 4,000 wolves crashing against 1,500. The sound was monstrous, steel on steel, snarls tearing through morning air, the wet crunch of bodies colliding at full speed. Everly had never heard anything like it, had never imagined violence could be this loud, this immediate, this total. She stood on the battlements beside Kyle, watching his warriors meet the coalition head-on. The northern wolves fought differently than she expected, not with rage or desperation, with calculation, every move precise, every strike measured. They weren't trying to win through dominance. They were trying to survive long enough to make the coalition bleed for every inch. Kale's voice cut through the chaos. Archers, east flank, now. Arrows rained. The coalition's left side buckled. Warriors fell. Others filled the gaps immediately. They kept coming, wave after wave, relentless. This isn't sustainable, Garrett shouted from below. We're holding, but barely. Then we hold barely. Kale's eyes never left the battlefield. That's all we need. For how long? Long enough. Everly didn't ask what that meant. She could feel it, though. Kyle wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to make a point, to show the coalition that destroying the obsidian crown would cost more than any of them were willing to pay. It was a gamble, the kind where everyone lost something. The only question was who'd lose everything first. The battle raged for hours. By midday, bodies covered the field. Northern wolves, coalition forces. The difference stopped mattering. Death didn't discriminate based on allegiance. It just took and took and took. Everly moved through the fortress, helping wounded warriors to the medical wing. Her hands were slick with blood. Her back screamed from the burns that hadn't fully healed. But she kept moving, kept working, because stopping meant thinking. And thinking meant acknowledging how many wolves were dying for a principle that maybe didn't matter as much as she'd believed. A young warrior grabbed her arm. His leg was shattered, bone jutted through skin. Is it bad? Everly forced her voice steady. You'll live. But you're done fighting today. Good. His eyes were glassy, shock setting in. I did my part anyway. You did. She squeezed his hand. Now rest. She left him with the healers, returned to the battlements. The coalition had pulled back slightly, regrouping. The field between the armies was a wasteland of broken bodies and abandoned weapons. Kale stood exactly where she'd left him. Blood splattered his armor, but none of it seemed to be his. His expression was carved from stone, unreadable. But Everly could feel the weight pressing down on him. Every death, every scream, every choice that had led to this moment. Leadership wasn't about making grand declarations or inspiring speeches. It was about carrying the cost of your decisions in your bones and staying upright anyway. That's what separated kings from pretenders. Not strength, not intelligence, just the willingness to bear weight that would crush most wolves and still function. Damien appeared at the front of the coalition forces. He held a white flag, the universal signal for parley. Kale's jaw tightened. He wants to negotiate. Or he wants to get close enough to kill you himself, Marcus said. Only one way to find out. Kale started down the stairs. Everly followed. He didn't tell her to stay back, didn't question her presence, just adjusted his stride slightly so she could match it. They met Damien in the middle of the field, 50 feet from both armies. Bodies surrounded them. The stench of death was overwhelming. Everly's wolf whimpered, not from fear, from grief. So much loss, so much waste. Damien looked terrible. Ash covered his face. Blood soaked his collar. His eyes were hollow, like he'd seen something that had carved out everything human and left only the shell. "This is madness," he said without preamble. "Then withdraw," Kale replied. "I can't. The coalition won't allow it. You're their leader. Lead them home." "It's not that simple." Damien's voice cracked. "Half of them want your head. The other half want to prove they're not weak for following me. If I call retreat now, I lose everything." "You've already lost everything." Kale gestured to the battlefield. "Look around. How many wolves have died today? 200? 3? For what? So you can salvage your pride. This isn't about pride. Then what is it about? Because I'm looking at you and all I see is a broken wolf who'd rather burn the world than admit he made a mistake." Damien flinched. "You don't understand. Make me understand." Silence stretched. The armies watched, waiting. One wrong word and violence would erupt again. One moment of weakness and hundreds more would die. Finally, Damien spoke. "I loved her." His eyes cut to Everly. "I know I had a shit way of showing it. I know I destroyed something precious. But I did love her. And watching her stand beside you, watching her become everything I told her she couldn't be, it destroyed me. So you started a war. I tried to prove I was right. That she was weak. That choosing Serafina was justified. But every move I made just proved how wrong I was. And instead of accepting that, I doubled down. Made it worse. Turned personal failure into political theater." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to know." Damien's voice was raw. "This war isn't about territory or pack law or any of the shit I claimed. It's about me being too much of a coward to face what I'd become. A wolf who threw away the best thing in his life because she made him feel inadequate." Everly's throat tightened. For months she'd wanted this. Wanted Damien to acknowledge what he'd done, to admit he'd been wrong. But standing here surrounded by corpses, the vindication felt hollow. Empty. Because his admission didn't resurrect the dead, didn't undo the damage. "I'm calling for your execution," Damien continued. "At the next council gathering, for war crimes." Kale's expression didn't change. "On what grounds?" "Unnecessary escalation. Refusal to negotiate. Excessive force. I'm manufacturing charges, bribing witnesses. Whatever it takes." He looked at Everly. "And when they execute you, I'm going to make her watch. Just like she made me watch her choose you." Everly stepped forward. "You're threatening him. After everything. After he tried to give you a way out. I'm past redemption." Damien's smile was broken. "I know that. But if I'm going down, I'm taking everyone with me. Starting with the man who showed me exactly what kind of alpha I should have been." The words hung in the air. Confession, threat, suicide note, all wrapped together. Kale studied him. Then, "No." "No what?" "No execution, no charges, no more of this." He turned to face both armies. "Every wolf here, Northern and Coalition. Hear me." His voice carried, amplified by alpha will. Impossible to ignore. This war ends now. Not because either side won, but because continuing it serves no one. We've all lost wolves today. Fathers, mothers, friends. And for what? So 2 alphas could settle a personal grudge. That's not leadership, that's ego. And I won't ask another wolf to die for my ego. "What are you doing?" Everly whispered. "Ending it." He looked at Damien. "You want me executed. Fine. I'll submit to the council's judgment. No resistance, no retaliation from the Obsidian Crown. In exchange, you withdraw your forces. Let your wolves go home to their families. You're surrendering. I'm choosing mercy over pride. Something you should have done months ago." Damien stared. "You'd give up everything, your kingdom, your life, for her, for all of them." Kale gestured to the battlefield. "Because power without purpose is just violence. And I'm done with violence." The declaration rippled through both armies. Northern wolves looked shocked, coalition forces confused. This wasn't how wars ended. Someone was supposed to dominate. Someone was supposed to submit. But Kyle was offering something different. Sacrifice. The kind that transformed defeat into dignity, that turned loss into legacy. Everly grabbed his arm. "You can't do this. I can. And I am. They'll kill you. Probably. Then I'll testify. Tell them everything. Make them understand. They won't care. Councils don't rule on truth. They rule on politics. And politically, executing me solves everyone's problems. It appeases the coalition, removes a destabilizing force, sends a message that no alpha is above pack law. So you just die. After everything we've built, everything we've fought for." Kale cupped her face. His hands were warm despite the cold morning. "I'm not dying for nothing. I'm dying so 1,500 wolves get to go home, so their families don't lose anyone else. That's not nothing. That's everything. I can't lose you. You won't." His forehead pressed against hers. "Because I'm going to spend every second until they execute me making sure you're protected, making sure the obsidian crown remains strong, making sure my legacy isn't war and violence. It's you. Everything good I've built lives in you." Tears burned her eyes. "I don't want your legacy. I want you. I know. But sometimes we don't get what we want. We get what we can live with." He kissed her, soft, final, then turned back to Damien. "Do we have a deal?" Damien looked between them. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite redemption, but maybe the beginning of understanding, of recognizing the difference between strength and dominance, between power and control. "Yes," he said quietly, "we have a deal." The armies withdrew, slowly, cautiously, like predators circling away from a kill they weren't sure they'd earned. But they went. Back to camps. Back to territories. Back to lives that had been interrupted by pride and politics. The fortress felt hollow, half empty. Warriors who'd survived moved through corridors like ghosts. Everly helped coordinate cleanup, identify bodies, send notifications to families who'd lost someone. Every name was a knife. Every notification a reminder of cost. Garrett found her in the Great Hall. "You should rest." "I can't." "You've been working for 16 hours straight. Then I'll work for 17. She didn't look up from the ledger. "Someone has to document this. Make sure we remember." "We'll remember." Garrett sat beside her. "But burning yourself out won't bring them back." "I know." Her hand shook slightly. "But it's all I can do. All I have control over." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "The king's made his will. Named you successor." "What?" "If the council executes him, you inherit the obsidian crown. Full authority, complete control." "That's insane." "I'm not." "You're exactly what this kingdom needs. Someone who leads with compassion instead of fear. Who sees wolves as people instead of assets." "I don't want it." "Doesn't matter. It's yours." He left. Everly sat alone in the empty hall, staring at names that blurred through tears. Successor. The word felt like a curse, like inheriting rubble and being expected to call it a castle. Kale found her there hours later. "You're still awake, can't sleep." "Me neither." He sat beside her, looked at the ledger. "That's a lot of names, too many." They sat in silence. Outside, dawn approached. The second dawn since the battle, since everything had changed. "I don't know how to do this," Everly whispered. "How to be what they need. Same way you've done everything else. One decision at a time. What if I make the wrong decision?" Then you learn from it. Adjust. Keep moving. That's all leadership is. Controlled stumbling forward while pretending you know where you're going. Despite everything, she almost smiled. "That's terrible advice. It's honest advice." He took her hand. "You're going to be incredible, Everly. Not because you're perfect, but because you care. And wolves follow leaders who care more than leaders who dominate." "I'm scared." "Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. It's the fearless ones who destroy everything. The council summons arrived 3 days later. Formal, sealed with 7 marks. Kael was ordered to appear before them in 1 week to answer charges of warmongering, territorial aggression, and violations of pack sovereignty. The charges were exactly what Damien had promised: manufactured, exaggerated, designed to justify an execution that was already decided. Kael read the summons without emotion, then set it aside. "All right, let's prepare." "Prepare how?" Marcus demanded. "You're walking into an execution. I'm walking into a trial. There's a difference. The outcome's the same." "Maybe, but how we get there matters." They spent the week organizing succession, transferring authority, securing alliances. Kael worked with the same cold efficiency he brought to everything, like he was planning a campaign instead of his own death. Everly watched him compartmentalize, watched him lock away fear and uncertainty and grief, watched him become the weapon everyone needed him to be. And she hated it, hated that the world demanded this from him, demanded he sacrifice himself so others could feel safe. But she also understood. Because that's what power cost. Not money or resources or territory. It cost pieces of yourself. And true leaders paid that cost, knowing they'd never get those pieces back. The night before the trial, Kael found her on the ramparts. Their spot, where everything important had been said. "Come with me tomorrow," he said, "to watch them kill you, to stand beside me. One last time." Everly wanted to refuse, wanted to spare herself the memory, but denying him felt cruel, so she nodded. "I'll be there. Thank you." He pulled her close. They stood wrapped together as stars wheeled overhead. The universe kept turning regardless of human suffering, indifferent to grief and loss and the impossibility of loving someone you were about to lose. "I never thought I'd care about someone this much," Kael said quietly. "Never thought I'd find someone worth dying for." "You're not dying for me. You're dying for a principle." "No. I'm dying because loving you taught me that some things matter more than survival, more than power, and if my death protects that lesson, protects you and everything we built, then it's worth it. Nothing's worth losing you. Then remember me, not as a king, not as an alpha, just as the wolf who loved you completely. That's all I want, to be remembered for that." Tears streamed down her face. She didn't try to stop them. "I'll remember." They held each other until dawn broke, then dressed in formal attire, prepared for theater that pretended at justice. The council chambers were massive, vaulted ceilings, stone walls carved with the names of every alpha who'd ruled in the last 5 centuries. 7 seats arranged in a semicircle. Behind them, hundreds of witnesses, alphas from every territory, observers documenting history. Kael entered with Everly at his side. He walked like he owned the ground, like even facing execution, he remained a king. The crowd murmured, some in respect, others in anticipation. Morgan presided, her face was unreadable. "Kael Draven, you stand accused of warmongering against the Southern Coalition. How do you plead?" "Guilty." The word dropped like an explosion. The chamber erupted, shouting, protests, confusion. Morgan slammed her staff until silence returned. "You admit the charges." "I admit starting a conflict that could have been avoided. I admit letting pride interfere with diplomacy. I admit that wolves died because I refused to compromise." The council members exchanged glances. This wasn't supposed to happen. Defendants fought, argued, denied. They didn't confess. "However," Kael continued, "I also state for the record that every action I took was in defense of wolves who'd been exploited. That refusing to apologize wasn't about pride. It was about refusing to validate a system that punishes compassion and rewards cruelty. I'm not finished." His voice cut across Morgan's protest. "You want to execute me. Fine, I accept that. But make sure history records why. Not because I was guilty, because I was inconvenient, because I reminded every alpha here that power should protect, not dominate. And that scared you." Silence filled the chamber, heavy, suffocating. Morgan leaned forward. "Are you finished?" "Almost." Kael turned to face the gathered alphas. "I have one request. Everly Hart inherits the obsidian crown. Full authority, no challenges, no interference. She leads according to her conscience. not yours. That's unprecedented, another council member said. So is executing an alpha for refusing to apologize. Either we're breaking precedent or we're not. Choose. The council deliberated. 15 minutes that felt like hours. Finally, Morgan spoke. Your request is granted. In exchange, you accept execution by dawn tomorrow. No appeals, no delays. Agreed. The trial concluded. Cale was taken to a holding cell beneath the chambers. Everly fought to follow, but guards blocked her path. She watched him disappear down stone stairs. Watched the door seal. That night felt endless. She sat in quarters provided by the council, stared at walls, couldn't eat, couldn't think, just existed in a void where tomorrow meant loss and there was nothing she could do to stop it. A knock sounded. She opened the door. Damien stood there. He looked terrible, older, broken. I'm sorry, he said. For what? Threatening him. Starting a war. Getting him killed. Pick one. All of it. Damien's voice was raw. I destroyed everything good in my life because I was too proud to admit I wasn't enough. And now he's dying because I couldn't let go. Why are you here? To tell you that he's not dying for nothing. What he said in that chamber, about power protecting instead of dominating. It's changing things. Alphas are talking, questioning. The old ways are cracking. Good. But he'll still be dead. I know. Damien stepped closer. For what it's worth, I wish I could take it back. All of it. The rejection, the humiliation, everything. You can't. No one can. I know, but I needed you to hear it. You deserve better than what I gave you, and he deserved better than what I did to him. Yes, we did. Damien left. Everly returned to staring at walls, counting hours, waiting for dawn. It came too fast. Guards collected her before sunrise, led her to the execution grounds. A courtyard opened to the sky. The council sat in their seats. Witnesses filled the perimeter. Kyle was brought out in chains. He looked calm, resigned. When his eyes found Everly's, he smiled. Small, sad, final. Morgan read the charges one last time. The sentence. Execution by beheading at sunrise. Traditional, quick, merciful by alpha standards. The executioner stepped forward. A massive wolf with an axe that gleamed in pre-dawn light. Kyle knelt, placed his head on the block. Everly couldn't watch, couldn't look away, trapped between horror and the need to honor his request, to stand beside him. One last time. The executioner raised the axe. Stop! The voice came from the council. Not Morgan, another member, older, a male with silver fur and scars covering his throat. He stood. This is wrong. Councilman Thane, Morgan said coldly. The vote was unanimous. The vote was political. Thane descended from his seat. Walked toward Kyle. But this execution serves no purpose except satisfying wounded pride, and I will not be party to it. You're outvoted. Then I resign. Thane turned to face the gathered alphas. I've served this council for 30 years, participated in dozens of judgments, but I've never seen us execute an alpha for refusing to be complicit in injustice, and I won't start now. Another council member stood, then another. Within minutes, 4 of the 7 had resigned. The council no longer had quorum. Without quorum, they couldn't enforce the sentence. Morgan's face went white with rage. You're destroying centuries of tradition. We're ending centuries of corruption, Thane replied. There's a difference. He approached Kyle. Remove the chains personally. Alpha Draven. You're free to go. Kale stood slowly, like he couldn't quite believe it. He looked at Everly. She ran to him, crashed into his arms. He caught her, held on like she might disappear. How? She whispered against his chest. I don't know. But I'm not questioning it. They left the execution grounds together. Behind them, the council dissolved into chaos. Alphas arguing, some demanding Kyle's death, others celebrating the resignation. The old order fracturing in real time. But Everly didn't care. She walked out of that courtyard with Kyle alive beside her. That was enough. That was everything. The journey north took 3 days. They traveled with a small escort. Most of the northern forces had already returned home. The fortress appeared on the 3rd evening, lights burning in windows, wolves moving through courtyards, life continuing despite everything. Garrett met them at the gates. Welcome home, Alpha. Good to be home. Cale looked at Everly. Both of us. The fortress erupted in celebration. Warriors who'd thought they'd lost their king found him alive. The relief was palpable, tangible. It poured through corridors and spilled into courtyards. For one night, loss and grief gave way to joy. But the next morning, reality returned. Kyle assembled his council, addressed the aftermath. 13 northern wolves had died in the battle, 53 wounded. The coalition had lost over 200, numbers that would haunt them all. We need to rebuild, Kyle said. Not just structures. Trust. We need wolves to believe that leadership can be different, that strength doesn't require cruelty. How do we do that, Marcus asked. By living it. Everly spoke for the first time. By making decisions that prioritize pack welfare over personal glory. By admitting when we're wrong. By choosing mercy when revenge would be easier. The council members looked at her, then at Kyle. He nodded. She's right, and she's going to help me do it. As what? As my equal. Kale's voice was firm. Co-ruler of the Obsidian Crown, full authority. Every decision we make together. Everly's breath caught. Kyle, I'm not asking. He met her eyes. I'm stating fact. You're as much a part of this kingdom as I am, maybe more, because wolves don't just respect you. They trust you, and trust is worth more than fear. I don't know if I'm ready. No one ever is. But you'll learn. Same way I did. And I'll be beside you the entire time. The coronation happened 3 weeks later. Not a traditional ceremony. Kyle refused crowns and formal declarations. Instead, he stood before the entire kingdom in the Great Hall and simply said, Everly Hart is your queen. Honor her as you honor me. The wolves roared approval, not because they were commanded, because they'd seen her work. Seen her sacrifice, seen her choose them when she could have run. That night, Everly stood on their balcony, no longer just hers, but theirs, watching the northern lights dance. Kyle joined her, wrapped his arms around her waist. They swayed slightly, exhausted, relieved, alive. A year ago I was running through a forest convinced I was worthless, she said quietly. Now I'm ruling a kingdom. How did that happen? You stopped believing the lies, started seeing the truth, which is that you were never weak. You were just surrounded by blind idiots. She laughed, leaned back against him. What happens now? We rebuild, we heal. We prove that power and compassion aren't opposites. And if we fail, then we fail together. But at least we tried. Months passed. The Obsidian Crown stabilized, trade routes reopened, alliances strengthened, word spread of the kingdom ruled by 2 alphas who valued wisdom over dominance. Other packs started adopting similar structures, sharing power, including perspectives beyond the traditional male hierarchy. It wasn't perfect. Change never was. But it was happening, slowly, persistently, like water wearing down stone. Damien sent a letter 6 months after the trial. Short, formal. He'd stepped down as Alpha of Silvercrest, named a successor. Retired to a remote territory to live out his days in something resembling peace. The letter contained no apology, no request for forgiveness, just acknowledgement of mistakes, of growth, of acceptance that some damage couldn't be repaired. Everly read it once, then burned it. Not from anger, from closure. That chapter was finished, the words written, the lesson learned. She focused on the present, on wolves who needed her attention, on a kingdom that required constant care, on a mate who made her laugh and challenged her and reminded her every day that she was exactly enough. A year after the coronation, Kyle found her in the library, reading reports, making notes, planning initiatives. You work too hard, he observed, says the wolf, who was up until midnight reviewing supply chains. That's different. How? I enjoy supply chains. You're forcing yourself through bureaucracy you hate. Someone has to do it. Delegate. To who? To literally anyone else. He pulled the reports away. You're a queen, not a clerk. I'm both. She tried to retrieve the documents. He held them out of reach. Hale, give those back. No, I need them. You need a break. I can't afford a break. Why not? Because people are depending on me. Wolves who fought and bled and sacrificed. I can't let them down. You're not letting anyone down by being human. He set the reports aside, pulled her close. You've spent your entire life trying to be enough for other people. When are you going to accept that you're already enough for yourself? The words cracked something in her chest, a wall she'd been maintaining since before Damien, since childhood maybe. The belief that love and value were things earned through constant performance, that rest meant laziness, that being human meant being weak. Tears burned her eyes. I don't know how. Then we'll figure it out together. His forehead pressed against hers. Because you're not alone anymore. You have me. You have this kingdom. You have wolves who'd follow you into hell because they believe in you, not because of what you do, because of who you are. She kissed him, deep, desperate, grateful. When they broke apart, both were crying. The good kind, the kind that washed away old pain and made space for something new. That night they stood on their balcony watching stars, the same stars that had witnessed her rejection, her flight, her rebirth. But they looked different now, less distant, less cold. Tell me a story, Everly said. About what? About us. 10 years from now, what does that look like? Kael was quiet for a moment. Then, we're still here, still ruling, still fighting for wolves who can't fight for themselves. You've tripled the medical facilities, established education programs, created trade partnerships that make the Obsidian Crown the wealthiest territory in the region, and you did it all while remaining the most compassionate wolf anyone's ever met. That's your version. Fine. What's yours? We've survived a dozen challenges. Political, personal. We've made mistakes and learned from them. We've raised wolves who value intelligence over dominance, and we've built something that lasts beyond us, a legacy of protection instead of conquest. I like that version. Me too. They stood wrapped together as the northern lights blazed overhead. Green, violet, gold, colors painting the darkness, proving that even in the coldest places, beauty existed. Far to the south, in Silvercrest territory, Damien sat alone in a cabin watching the same lights. He'd lost everything. Pack, mate, reputation, power, all of it gone. Burned away by pride and jealousy and the inability to recognize value when it stood beside him. But strangely, sitting there alone, he felt something unexpected. Not peace, not quite, but acceptance. The understanding that some lessons cost everything to learn, and the price was fair, brutal, but fair. He'd destroyed the best thing in his life, and she'd risen from the ashes to become someone extraordinary. There was poetry in that. Tragedy, justice, all tangled together in a way that made perfect sense. He hoped she was happy, hoped Kael treated her the way Damien should have, hoped the kingdom they built stood for centuries, not because he was noble, but because their success was his punishment, the constant reminder of what he'd lost. And maybe that was okay. Maybe living with that reminder was how he atoned, how he became something better than what he'd been. The lights faded. Dawn approached. Damien stood, stretched, began preparing for another day of solitude, another day of carrying consequences, another day of surviving the aftermath of choices made in anger and fear. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something, a foundation maybe, for the long work of becoming someone worth forgiving. Back in the fortress, Everly woke wrapped in Kael's arms. Sunlight streamed through windows, voices drifted from courtyards below. The normal sounds of a kingdom functioning, of life continuing despite everything that had tried to stop it. She watched Kael sleep. His face was peaceful, young almost. All the stone and ice melted away in unconsciousness. This was the wolf beneath the king. Vulnerable, human, hers. They'd survived impossible odds, overcome challenges that should have destroyed them, built something beautiful from ruins and rejection and the refusal to accept that broken meant finished, and somehow, impossibly, they'd done it together. Kael's eyes opened, found hers immediately. Morning, morning, she smiled. Sleep well, better than I have in years. Good. They lay there, no rush to move, no urgent crises demanding attention, just two wolves who'd fought through hell and found something worth protecting on the other side. Eventually they rose, dressed, prepared to face the day's challenges. Because kingdoms didn't run themselves, wolves needed leadership, problems required solutions, but they faced it together, equal, partners. Proof that strength didn't require domination, that power could protect instead of destroy, that two broken wolves could heal each other and build something stronger than either could have managed alone. Years later, historians would write about the Obsidian Crown, about the king who chose principle over pride, about the queen who rose from rejection to reshape an empire, about the kingdom that proved compassion and strength weren't opposites. But the truth was simpler than any history book could capture. Two wolves had stumbled into each other's lives, recognized something familiar in the other's pain, and decided that surviving together was better than thriving alone. They'd been right. And the kingdom they built stood as proof that the most radical act in a violent world wasn't conquest or domination or the accumulation of power. It was choosing to see value in the discarded, strength in the gentle, worth in the rejected. It was refusing to let cruelty define you, refusing to let pain make you cruel, refusing to accept that power required hardness when compassion was braver. Everly Hart had been called too weak to stand beside an alpha, too soft to lead, too broken to matter. And she'd proven every single assessment catastrophically wrong, not by becoming harder, but by refusing to let the world's violence make her cruel. By choosing mercy when revenge would have been easier, by believing that broken things could be beautiful, that rejected wolves could become queens, that love was stronger than dominance when given the chance. The crown sat heavy on her head. The responsibilities weighed on her shoulders. The expectations pressed from all sides. But she carried them, with grace, with strength, with the quiet confidence of someone who'd survived being thrown away and discovered she was made of something unbreakable. And when history remembered her name, and they would remember, it wouldn't be as Damian Blackwood's rejected mate. It would be as the queen who taught an empire that true strength wasn't measured by who you could dominate, but by who you chose to protect.